Chapter 1384. Chu Xiu was not surprised that Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery would seek refuge with Tianluo Treasure Temple. He did not spend a lot of effort to destroy the remnants of these two sects because it was unnecessary. The people from the Heavenly Net Treasure Buddhist sect were not blind or deaf. Even if Chu Xiu expended a lot of effort to kill the remnants of these two sects, the Heavenly Net Treasure Buddhist sect would still be able to find out what had happened when they descended to the lower realm. After all, Chu Xiu could not let the entire lower realm pretend to be deaf and mute. His power had not reached that level yet. As for what Tianluo Treasure Temple would choose, they might fall out with him, but they would definitely not fight him to the death for Subodhi Monastery and Great Light Temple. The reason was simple. Even if the people of those two sects were added together, they weren't worth that much. At the very least, they weren't worth enough to make the people of Sky Luo Treasure Temple follow him, Chu Xiu, and the Kunlun demon cult to the death. When the people of Tianluo Treasure Temple arrived, they found that Chu Xiu was already waiting for them at the entrance of the Nanman Branch Temple. The entire Nanman land had been occupied by Chu Xiu. It was not surprising that he knew of their arrival in advance. The leader of Tianluo Treasure Temple was Master of the Xitigarbha Pavilion, Ji Kong. Zen Master Jishan had to stay in Tianluo Treasure Temple. Moreover, they were not here to fight to the death with Chu Xiu today. They just wanted the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery back. Chu Xiu looked at the many monks who came and said with a warm smile, "Master Su Yun, long time no see. How have you been? And Master Rama, I didn't expect you to become younger and younger. Congratulations." When he saw Chu Xiu again, Rama's expression did not change, but Su Yun was already close to being ferocious. "Chu Xiu, in the past, you destroyed my Great Light Temple. I wonder if you regret not killing us? The heavenly law reincarnates. Your Kunlun devil cult will have this day sooner or later." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect Su Yun to hate him to this extent. Su Yun's mentality was already out of balance. In Chu Xiu's memory, Su Yun had always been calm. It was rare to see him lose his composure like this. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Heavenly Tao reincarnation? 500 years ago, you exterminated my Kunlun devil cult, and 500 years later, you took advantage of my Daluotian visit to seal my Kunlun devil cult's rootless sacred flame. Don't you think this is the cycle of the Heavenly Tao?" Su Yun still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Ji Kong. Since the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery had already been destroyed, what was the point of talking about these things at this time? Ji Kong stared at Chu Xiu and said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, I really didn't expect you to do such a thing. You deceived us so badly." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Master Ji Kong, what you said doesn't make sense. When have I ever lied to you? The Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery are Buddhist sects in the lower realm, while your Heavenly Luo Temple is Buddhist sect in the upper realm. I have enmity with the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery, but I have no enmity with your Heavenly Luo Temple. Master Ji Kong, think about it carefully. Among the Daluotian people, have I ever harmed your Heavenly Luo Temple? On the contrary, when you and I joined forces to deal with the Sanskrit sect, our cooperation was quite good." Ji Kong shook his head and said, "We're all Buddhist sects, so what's the difference? My Heavenly Luo Temple doesn't want to pursue the past enmity anymore. I came here today for one thing." Chu Xiu asked, "What is it?" Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "I want to return to the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery." "Impossible." When Chu Xiu heard this, he refused without even thinking about it. In fact, it was not a big deal to return the Great Light Temple to them. It was already in ruins. Moreover, there were 3 prime venerables and more than a dozen Daluotian forces in the northern Yen land. It was already a mess, so Chu Xiu could only set rules for them within his power. However, Subodhi Monastery was different. Subodhi Monastery was complete, and there was even the Subodhi treasure tree. Although Chu Xiu could not use it for the time being, not using it and handing it over were two different concepts. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "Is there really no room for negotiation?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Master Ji Kong, you want 2 places from me as soon as you open your mouth. Is this the attitude of a negotiation? Ji Kong took a deep breath. He knew this would be the result. When they became allies with Chu Xiu, they already knew Chu Xiu's character. It was not an ordinary kind of toughness. However, they were allies at that time. When facing the Sanskrit, Chu Xiu's tough attitude naturally made them happy. But now, Chu Xiu's stubborn attitude gave Ji Kong a headache. Ji Kong's face darkened, and he said coldly, "Cult Master Chu, as far as I know, you have offended a lot of people. The Sanskrit has already regarded you as a serious threat. Destroying a hall of the Sanskrit is something that the Heavenly Luo Temple has not been able to do for thousands of years. There is also the Dean of the Xinghe Martial Arts Academy, Xinghe Unfettered, Meng Xinghe. You killed his sworn brother, Yi Wei Kong, and now he wants to kill you. Today, you have rejected my conditions, which also means that you have formed a death feud with the Heavenly Luo Temple. At the same time, you have offended 3 top Daluotian forces. Cult Master Chu, do you really not feel any pressure?" Chu Xiu shrugged indifferently and said, "When there are too many lice, there is no itch. When there are too many debts, there is no need to worry. What's the difference between offending 2 or 3? Anyway, I can't beat any of them now. At most, I will directly release that person, and everyone can play together." Chu Xiu's attitude made Ji Kong's eyebrows twitch, but there was nothing he could do. Finally, he let out a long breath and said, "Cult Master Chu, in the past, you and I also fought side by side. Today, this poor monk does not want to force you too much. Let's fight. If this poor monk wins, you will return the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery to their 2 sections. If this poor monk loses, I will immediately retreat and never step into the southern barbaric land. What do you think?" Ji Kong had no other choice. He was at the 7th heaven, and Chu Xiu was at the 5th heaven. At this time, he proposed a fight. It even felt like he was bullying and losing his reputation. But now, it was really difficult for him to get off. Su Yun and Rama had just joined the Heavenly Luo Temple. It was fine if the request to kill Chu Xiu and destroy the Kunlun devil cult could not be fulfilled. If he could not even fulfill the request to return to their previous sects, then his Heavenly Luo Temple would seem to be too useless. But now, Chu Xiu's attitude was unusually tough. At this time, if he forced it, there was no other way but to attack the Kunlun devil cult. But the Heavenly Luo Temple was not crazy to that extent. Therefore, he could only fight with Chu Xiu in public to solve this problem. If he won, everything would be fine. If he lost, he could let Su Yun and Rama see that they had also contributed. At least, they would not be disappointed. Besides, Ji Kong did not think he would lose. Although Chu Xiu had the battle record of killing an 8th heaven expert, Yi Wei Kong was an 8th heaven expert who had lost his rationality. He could not be considered a normal 8th heaven expert. Since Master Ji Kong is interested, I would also like to experience the sharpness of the Heavenly Luo Temple's Buddhist techniques. In the Daluotian Kingdom, Chu Xiu had never fought against the cultivators of the Heavenly Luo Temple. After all, they were allies who had a very good relationship. Both sides retreated. Zen Master Ji Kong extended his hand to Chu Xiu and said, "Cult Master Chu, please go ahead." He was a 7th heaven martial immortal. In terms of seniority, he was much older than Chu Xiu. So, he was a bit embarrassed to attack first. Chu Xiu did not hold back. The instant Ji Kong finished speaking, he attacked. His attack was so powerful that it could collapse the heavens and rend the earth. He immediately used the phenomenon of heaven and earth. At the same time, the indestructible holy demon body was also wrapped around it. The huge divine power smashed down with a punch. The power seemed to be able to shatter the heavens and the earth. The storm of power it brought even formed a huge tornado that swept down. Ji Kong's eyebrows jumped. Chu Xiu actually used a divine power right from the start. What kind of fighting style was that? Ji Kong put his palms together and chanted scriptures. Swastikas appeared around his body. In the end, they merged into one, turning into a huge swastika that stretched for hundreds of feet above his head. It blocked Chu Xiu's punch. The power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, coupled with the power of the indestructible holy demon body, seemed to have pushed his strength to the extreme. The swastika Buddhist seal instantly shattered. Chu Xiu's punches did not stop. They smashed down one punch after another, smashing Ji Kong's entire body into the ground. The earth trembled, as if an earth dragon was flipping over. After several punches, a lake of several thousand feet appeared on the ground. Looking at Chu Xiu's demon-like figure, Su Yun felt powerless for the first time. He felt despair. Even when Chu Xiu destroyed the Great Light Temple, he did not feel despair. At that time, Su Ci sacrificed his life to cover their retreat. Otherwise, judging by Su Yun's personality, he would have gone to fight Chu Xiu with his life after entering the profound understanding of heaven and earth. Su Yun had always been a proud person. Back then, in order to condense the 9 domains, he even chose to suppress his own cultivation. He wanted to enter the profound understanding of heaven and earth in the most perfect state. However, today, when he saw Chu Xiu attack, it was also the first time he saw a martial immortal expert attack. The destructive power made Su Yun truly despair. So what if he had a perfect, profound understanding of heaven and earth? Before such inhuman power, he was like an ant. If the current Chu Xiu were to attack the Great Light Temple again, he would probably be able to destroy the Great Light Temple with a single punch. On the other side, Luo Mo's eyes were wide open. He stared unblinkingly at the power that Chu Xiu released when he attacked. Compared to Su Yun's despair, he was more interested in the power that Chu Xiu had displayed. Is this a martial immortal? Although Luo Mo also had a foundation comparable to a martial immortal, his physical body could not withstand that power. So he was temporarily unable to fully unleash it. At that moment, a resounding Buddhist chant descended from the crater that Chu Xiu blasted out. A Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's dharmic image rose from it. It was the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, who had suppressed thousands of evil spirits from hell and was comparable to a Buddha. Chapter 1385. There were no weaklings among the Tianluo Treasure Temple's martial immortals. The Ksitagarbha Pavilion was one of the strongest pavilions in the Tianluo Treasure Temple. Although Ji Kong was old, he was strong with age, and his foundation was even deeper. Although the few punches from Chu Xiu's law embodiment of heaven and earth made him look a little embarrassed, they didn't really hurt him. The huge Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva law embodiment of heaven and earth stood between heaven and earth, and any rules were completely suppressed under it. Ksitagarbha prison suppression. This was also one of the inherited magical powers of the Tianluo Treasure Temple and the Ksitagarbha Pavilion. Its power was extremely overbearing, and it didn't seem to match Ji Kong's thin and weak figure. The law embodiment of heaven and earth clashed with the powerful magical power of Ksitagarbha prison suppression. One was an extreme power magical power, and the other was an overbearing magical power that could suppress countless rules. The two clashed, and there was no clear winner. Chu Xiu frowned slightly. Ji Kong's strength was really beyond his imagination. Among the 7th Heaven martial immortals, Chu Xiu had only fought with Fang Daochen and Mu Baishuang. Mu Baishuang was a standard swordsman, and his martial path was sharp and singular. It wasn't too difficult for Chu Xiu to fight against Mu Baishuang with his agile and ever-changing martial path. On the other hand, Fang Daochen's power was extremely meticulous. Although he could reach the level of using the power of rules to set up a formation, the changes in his power were insufficient. Chu Xiu could completely break through everything with his strength. Only Ji Kong was very difficult to deal with. His foundation of power and mastery of the power of rules had almost reached the peak of the 7th heaven, and he wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against the law embodiment of heaven and earth. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and dispersed his magical powers with Ji Kong almost at the same time. Since they were evenly matched, there was no meaning in using magical powers again, other than wasting energy for no reason. In the next moment, the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet on Chu Xiu's right hand shone brightly, and the 6 paths of Saha wondrous splendor wheels appeared, enveloping Ji Kong within it. The power of the 6 paths of wheels spun wildly. Ji Kong frowned slightly. He could naturally recognize that the foundation of this technique was actually a Buddhist technique of his heavenly Luo treasure Buddha lineage. However, he had only seen the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation in ancient books. Now, almost no one cultivated the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Sensing the power of the six paths as a wondrous splendor wheel, Ji Kong chanted a scripture. Under the influence of the scripture, the power of the laws around him revolved around him, forming a formation that resisted the pulling and strangling power of the six paths of samsara. Ksitigarbha Origin Vow Scripture. Ji Kong had been reciting this scripture all his life. When he didn't know martial arts, he began to recite it. When he stepped into the real pellet state, he still recited it. When he reached the martial immortal realm, the power in the scripture had even been in line with the rules of heaven and earth, forming a kind of magical power, but it wasn't a magical power. Seeing that the scene was in a stalemate again, Chu Xiu retracted the six paths saw wondrous splendor wheel. The breaking formation on his waist was already unsheathed, and he launched a powerful slash with boundless demonic energy. One slash swallow the sky. Suppress. Ji Kong groaned and formed a Buddhist seal with his hand. He condensed a swastika Buddhist seal with absolute power to resist Chu Xiu's slash. But in the next moment, the demonic energy on the one slash swallow the sky began to flow like a living thing, turning into a huge demonic shadow. It directly wrapped Ji Kong's entire body in it, eroding the power around him. The power of the creation sky demon, the cycle of life and death, could assimilate any kind of power. However, countless golden Sanskrit words appeared around Ji Kong's body, and Buddhist light soared into the sky, resisting the power of the creation sky demon. That was the indestructible golden body, and it was cultivated to the extreme, comparable to the power of a divine power. Ji Kong, who was slightly thin and weak, threw a punch. His power was condensed to the extreme, breaking through the obstruction of the creation sky demon. He retreated hurriedly, retracted his power, and said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, we can't determine the victor. Let's not fight for now." Ji Kong looked calm on the surface, but his heart was filled with shock. He was not shocked by Chu Xiu's power, but Chu Xiu's endless means. If one method couldn't defeat you, then he would change to another. Since the beginning of the fight, how many methods had Chu Xiu used? He had both divine powers and powerful martial arts techniques, and Ji Kong also knew that Chu Xiu still had two powerful divine powers that could be called trump cards that he had not used yet. If the fight continued, Ji Kong did not know how many more methods Chu Xiu had, but he would run out of tricks. Moreover, if the fight continued, if both sides were really angry and it turned into a fight to the death, it would not be worth it. Chu Xiu also stopped and said indifferently, "Since it's a draw, what does Master Ji Kong plan to do? Retreat?" Ji Kong turned back to look at the indignant Su Yun and the indifferent Rama. If he retreated, these two would probably be disappointed with the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Zen Master Ji Shan had once said that they had to control the martial artists of these two sects in the lower realm and treat them equally. They even had to nurture them as the direct disciples of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha, so they had to be loyal. If he left just like that, not only would it be embarrassing, but it would also easily cause Su Yun and Rama to lose faith in the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, today, this poor monk brought the people of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha here, not to fight to the death with you, but also not to go through the motions. The former encampments of the Great Light Temple and the Subodhi Monastery must be taken back. Name a price. The heavenly Luo treasure Buddha is willing to trade things. As far as I know, these two places are useless to you. The Great Light Temple has already become ruins, and the Subodhi Monastery is not compatible with the attributes of your Kunlun devil cult. Now, only a small number of your Kunlun devil cult disciples are stationed there." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not expect that Ji Kong would say such a thing. If it was a trade, it was not impossible. Of course, the most important thing was that looking at the appearance of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha, they should value the people of Su Yun and Rama very much, so they were willing to pay a price to make them loyal. If he did not agree, they would probably continue to pester him again. At that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "It's not impossible to trade. What I want is very simple. In the battle 500 years ago, your heavenly Luo treasure Buddha should have collected that person's blood essence. Although I don't know how much you have collected, it will definitely not be a small amount. I only need 50 drops, and I will return the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery to you. In Chu Xiu's current state, his realm was actually higher than his foundation of power. He had fought many experts of the 6th and 7th layer of the heaven, and he still had the source of yin and yang in his body. So, his comprehension of the power of the source of rules had actually reached a very high level. However, his power could not keep up with Chu Xiu's comprehension of realm. After all, power needed a long time to accumulate. Starting from the first layer of the martial immortal realm, Chu Xiu had been relying on external power to cheat. However, when others borrowed external power, it would cause their realm to be unstable. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's realm far exceeded his foundation of power. Even if he relied on external power, his realm was still very solid. So, at that moment, there were only two ways that Chu Xiu could think of using external power. One was to rely on the source of yin and yang to cultivate. However, it was too dangerous and full of unknowns. If he was not careful, he could easily play himself to death, unless he had an expert of Ning Xuanji's level by his side to protect him. The second way was to absorb the blood essence left behind by Dugu Weiwei in the past. After all, he was considered a part of Dugu Weiwei. Absorbing Dugu Weiwei's blood essence was equivalent to taking back what belonged to him in the past. After hearing Chu Xiu's request, Ji Kong frowned, looking a little conflicted. They could not refine Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. After so many years, their heavenly Luo treasure temple had not researched anything valuable from it. It was almost equivalent to trash. However, now that they knew that Chu Xiu had the ability to release Dugu Weiwei and asked for Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, they were afraid that there was some kind of conspiracy involved. After thinking about it, Ji Kong decided to agree to Chu Xiu's conditions. In the battle 500 years ago, almost all the major sects had collected some of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. With Chu Xiu's current strength and the forces he controlled, the blood essence in the eastern domain was probably already in his hands. So, they were not lacking in the heavenly Luo treasure temple's blood essence. Moreover, even if Dugu Weiwei was released, it would be trouble for the entire Daluotian, not trouble for the heavenly Luo treasure temple alone. However, the matter in front of them was related to the interests of the heavenly Luo treasure temple. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "I agree to your conditions, but my heavenly Luo treasure temple did not collect that much blood essence at all. There were only 48 drops, and I wasted 6 drops during my research." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Who are you lying to? The world's sword sects were able to collect more than 20 drops. With the heavenly Luo treasure temple's strength at the time, how could it have only collected more than 40 drops?" Ji Kong said angrily, "A monk does not lie. This poor monk has already decided to make a deal. Do you think I will lie to you about the quantity?" Seeing Ji Kong's expression, Chu Xiu finally believed that the heavenly Luo treasure temple really only had that much blood essence. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "All right, we'll exchange the blood essence with one hand and the place with the other. When the blood essence is here, I will immediately withdraw the disciples stationed at Sabodhi Monastery." Ji Kong snorted coldly and immediately sent someone back to the heavenly Luo treasure temple to get the blood essence from the Daluotian side. Although most of the elite warriors of the heavenly Luo treasure temple had already descended to the lower realm, some of the accumulated treasures and other things still had to be placed at the Daluotian heavenly Luo treasure temple. It took an entire month for Dugu Weiwei's blood essence to return to him. After inspecting the goods, Chu Xiu immediately sent someone to withdraw the disciples stationed at Sabodhi Monastery. The Great Light Temple of the Northern Yen didn't matter. It was just a ruin, and no one even looked after it. However, after Chu Xiu's people withdrew, Luo Imo did not send too many disciples back. He only sent a small number of disciples back to repair the sect. The heavenly Luo treasure temple had not completely fallen out with Chu Xiu, and the southern land was still within Chu Xiu's sphere of influence. Stuffing the disciples into Sabodhi Monastery at this time was not placing a spy in Chu Xiu's sphere of influence, but sending meat to Chu Xiu's mouth. Chapter 1386. The confrontation between Tianluo Treasure Temple and Chu Xiu did not cause too much of a commotion. Neither side lost, but both felt that they had won. Chu Xiu was worried about how to quickly accumulate his strength, so he used 2 places he didn't need in exchange for a large amount of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. On the other hand, the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple had used Dugu Weiwei's essence blood, which they had no use for, to exchange for 2 sects' territories. This made Shuyun and Rama submit to them. No matter what, it was worth it. After getting Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, Chu Xiu wasted no time and went into seclusion. While he was in seclusion, the Sanskrit sect became restless, and the reason was related to Chu Xiu. Rama and Shuyun submitted and brought a large number of elite warriors to join Tianluo Treasure Temple. It could be said that the quality of Tianluo Treasure Temple's disciples skyrocketed, which made the Sanskrit sect more and more uneasy. Chu Xiu had destroyed one of the halls of the Sanskrit sect, so they were no longer as strong as the Heavenly Treasure Buddha. If they didn't make use of the opportunity in the lower realm to catch up, they might really be eliminated. However, when the Sanskrit sect recruited disciples in the lower realm, they were embarrassed to find that very few disciples were willing to join them. On the northern Yan side, there were many warriors in Chu Xiu's sphere of influence who were willing to join the primeval venerables. In West Chu, the Three Pure Temple used its reputation as the supreme leader of Taoism to attract many warriors to join. There were even some Taoism warriors who had specially rushed over from Eastern Qi and Northern Yan. As for the Star River Martial Academy, because of the discrimination education and the extravagance, it also attracted many warriors. There was no need to mention Tianluo Treasure Temple. 2 sects took the initiative to join, and the number and quality of the younger generation of disciples skyrocketed. Only the Sanskrit sect had almost no harvest. In the Sanskrit sect's hall in the lower realm, Rinaja frowned and said in a deep voice, "What's going on? After all this time, only these few people are willing to join our Sanskrit sect?" The palace master of the Brahma Heaven Palace's Peacock Divine Palace, Suanna, said helplessly, "Our Brahma religion is quite famous in the Daluotian world, but no one in the lower realm knows about our heritage. Even those martial artists who joined before thought that our Brahma religion is also a branch of the Buddhism sect, and treated our relationship with the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple as the northern and southern Buddhist sects in the lower realm." Rinaja frowned and said, "Why didn't the legacy of my Sanskrit lineage be passed down?" Suanna said, "Perhaps when our Sanskrit left the lower realm, we brought most of our power to the Daluotian, causing our inheritance in the lower realm to be completely cut off after 10,000 years. I've done some research recently, and the only sect that has anything to do with the Sanskrit sect is the 6th demon sect, but it's not that strong." Rinaja waved his hand and said, "Even if it's not strong, it's still better than it is now. We can give him the conditions to join our Sanskrit sect." Suanna said helplessly, "It's useless even if we give him the conditions. The 6th demon sect is a branch of the Devil Dao in the lower realm, and Chu Xiu's Kunlun Devil cult has already unified the Devil Dao in the lower realm." Damn it! Rinaja, who had always been calm and composed, couldn't help but curse. He had thought that the lower realm was an opportunity for everyone else, but to his Sanskrit sect, it was like a sightseeing trip and they wouldn't get anything. At this time, Yenma suddenly laughed strangely and said, "Isn't it easy to get a disciple? The Eastern Qi in the lower realm is huge, and it's not smaller than our Western region. There are so many sects and aristocratic families, we can just go to them one by one and ask for elite disciples, then force them to join our Sanskrit sect." Rinaja frowned and said, "We're recruiting disciples, not enemies. A melon that's forcefully picked won't be sweet." Yenma laughed coldly and said, "Who cares if it's sweet or not, as long as it can quench our thirst? Don't forget, our Sanskrit sect's techniques are not something those ants in the lower realm can compare to. As long as one has the heart to pursue martial arts, after learning our techniques, it'll be easy to choose. Also, the Vishnu Palace is preparing to be rebuilt, and the last surviving palace master of the Divine Palace, Illusion Heavenly Palace Master Ji Xinlua, is not bad. He's developed many secret techniques that target the primordial spirit and even the mind of a martial artist. When the time comes, Ji Xinlua will use secret techniques to distort the mind of those who are stubborn, and even a melon that isn't sweet will become sweet." After saying that, Yanma also deliberately added, Ji Xinlua, that kid is not bad, very good. He is much stronger than his predecessor called Moriha. In the future, when the Vishnu Hall is truly rebuilt, I think this kid will be the lord of the hall. Rinaja said indifferently, whoever becomes the palace master is decided by the sect master, not something you and I can express our opinions on. Rinaja said this, but in his heart he was thinking. Although Yanma's method was simple and crude, it was indeed the fastest way to achieve results. Moreover, the Sanskrit sect had always been domineering, simple and crude. No one in the lower realm could stop them, so it was possible to do this. So Rinaja nodded, rarely agreeing with Yanma's suggestion. Let's do as you say. 3 months later, in the southern temple of the Kunlun devil cult, Chu Xiu had already refined all of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, but he was still in seclusion to accumulate power. Chu Xiu had also discovered that although Dugu Weiwei's essence blood contained a great amount of energy, it was still possible for him to smoothly absorb it. However, at Chu Xiu's current level, it was impossible for him to directly cross over to the next level. So although the blood essence refined this time was more than the previous time, it still only allowed Chu Xiu to reach the peak of the 5th heaven, not the 6th. At this time, someone suddenly came to report that Emo Tianlin had come to visit. Although Emo Tianlin's power was not much, he was Chu Xiu's good friend. So the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult interrupted Chu Xiu's seclusion to specially inform him. When Chu Xiu came out of seclusion, he saw Luo Feiheng teasing Emo Tianlin in the main hall. Now that you're the family master, you're acting all high and mighty. I heard you took in a few more concubines? What happened to the infatuated one who cried when he was dumped? Emo Tianlin laughed awkwardly. After all, I'm the family master. I have to have children. Please understand. Also, don't slander me. When have I ever cried? Luo Feiheng pursed his lips. Have children? Is that why you're a stud horse? Also, you've already experienced the vitality tide in the lower realm. Why are you still so weak? Is it because you're having children every day that you've neglected your cultivation? Luo Feiheng patted Emo Tianlin's shoulder and said in an experienced tone, men need to control themselves when it comes to sex. Look at how haggard you look. I'm still young and beautiful. Lu Fengxian is even more charming than 10 years ago. Cult Master Chu's appearance hasn't changed much over the years. Only you look like you've been ravaged. Hiske, I can't even look at you. Do you need me to ask Long Ling, or for some aphrodisiac goo? She has a lot of goo at her place. There must be some aphrodisiac goo. Why don't you eat more bananas? That Jianghu guy always said that bananas are aphrodisiac. Maybe it will work? Emo Tianlin was already on the verge of tears from Luo Feiheng's teasing. Ever since this woman returned from the Daluocean, her personality seemed to have become even worse. Now, Emo Tianlin was the head of the clan. If it was someone else who teased him like this, he would definitely fall out with them. But facing Luo Feiheng, whom he had only known for a short period of time, he really didn't dare to fall out. Moreover, even if he did, he wouldn't be able to defeat Luo Feiheng. Luo Feiheng was much stronger than him now. At this moment, seeing Chu Xiu walking over, Emo Tianlin hurriedly broke away from Luo Feiheng. As he walked over, he said, "Congratulations, Brother Chu. The Kunlun devil cult's name has spread far and wide in both the upper and lower realms. It's even more impressive than 500 years ago." Luo Feiheng curled his lips. This person was really getting more and more boring as he grew older. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Famous far and wide? I'm afraid it's infamy spreading far and wide. Brother Emo, what brings you here today?" Emo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, "Today, I'm here to ask Brother Chu for a favor." "There's no need to talk about favors between us. Brother Emo, just say it." Among his good friends on the Dragon and Tiger list, Emo Tianlin's strength could be said to be the weakest. Of course, it couldn't be said that he was weak. The current Emo Tianlin also had the cultivation of true fire spirit refinement realm. He was even stronger than the Emo clan's ancestor. But compared to monsters like Chu Xiu, Fang Qishao, and Lu Fengxian, he was much weaker. Even Xie Xiao Lu was a level stronger than him. Most importantly, Xie Xiao Lu had a powerful master. He could do whatever he wanted. But Chu Xiu still admired Mo Tianlin. He didn't admire his strength, but his strength of character. Mo Tianlin was a person who didn't fight for anything. He seemed very indifferent. But in reality, he had his own bottom line. When the Mo clan was in danger, he could have asked Chu Xiu for help. But he didn't ask for help. Instead, he cultivated the hidden sword technique alone. He risked his life to deal with the changes in the Mo clan. Later, Chu Xiu established the Kunlun devil cult and became famous. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was famous in Jianghu. But at that time, Mo Tianlin never asked for anything from Chu Xiu. For so many years, Mo Tianlin quietly guarded his Mo clan. He never used Chu Xiu's power to develop himself. As a result, the new generation of martial artists and forces didn't even know that the Mo clan of Shangyang, which was ranked in the middle of the 9 great clans, actually had a powerful friend like Chu Xiu. Friendship was friendship, and interests were interests. Mo Tianlin cherished the friendship he had when he was roaming Jianghu. So no matter how difficult it was, he wouldn't easily ask for help. He didn't want this friendship to be tainted with interests. Now that he personally came to ask Chu Xiu, it could be imagined that his Mo clan must have encountered something unsolvable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come. With a sigh, Mo Tianlin said in a deep voice, "I can't stay in Eastern Qi anymore. So I want Brother Chu to help me allocate a territory in either the southern barbarian land or the northern Yen land. I'm going to move the whole Mo clan to these 2 places." Chapter 1387. The location of a sect was very important to a force, and it was impossible to change it at will. For example, Chu Xiu's Kunlun devil cult was located on Kunlun Mountain because of the rootless sacred fire. Now, they were gathered in southern China because of the passage between the 2 worlds. Although the Mo family of Shangyang was not a very powerful force, they had been developing there for thousands of years. They had a foundation in Shangyang and all kinds of connections. Even if the Kunlun devil cult opened the way for them, they would have to start all over again. So, Chu Xiu asked in surprise, "Brother Mo, what happened in Eastern Qi? Why are you preparing to move your family?" Mo Tianlin sighed. "It's all because of the Sanskrit. Brother Chu, was the Sanskrit so overbearing when it was still in the Daluotian Empire? Not long ago, the Sanskrit ordered all the major sects and families within its sphere of influence to send disciples to join the Sanskrit according to their strength. This order is mandatory. If anyone dares to disobey, the palace master of the Sanskrit divine palace will immediately come to your door. Because the Mo family is one of the 9 major families, we are required to send 10 disciples to join the Sanskrit no matter how strong we are. But how many young disciples are there in the Mo family? This is breaking the roots of the Mo family." At this moment, Chu Xiu seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly said, "Brother Mo, tell me everything that the Sanskrit sect did in the lower realm in detail." When Mo Tianlin finished, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his eyebrows. "Brother Mo, you actually don't need to move your family out of Eastern Qi. I have a plan that can help you." Mo Tianlin's eyes lit up. "Brother Chu, are you going to lead the Kunlun devil cult to attack the Sanskrit?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "We can't defeat them. The 2 temple masters of the Sanskrit sect are both 8th heavenly layer martial immortals. There are also several temple masters of the divine palace who are martial immortals. The strength of the 2 temple masters is astonishing. The current Kunlun devil cult is no match for them. Moreover, I have recently offended the heavenly Luo temple. If I attack the Sanskrit sect, I will also be stepping into the heavenly Luo temple's territory. Whether I win or lose, the heavenly Luo temple will hit me while I'm down." Mo Tianlin was speechless. Brother Chu is still the same Brother Chu. No matter where he goes, he always attracts hatred. To be able to offend all the top Daluotian sects, this was also a kind of ability. However, even though we can't attack them by force, we can still outsmart them. Don't forget, we've been here for thousands of years, and the Sanskrit sect is the outsider. Brother Mo, this plan is a little dangerous, especially for you. But if it succeeds, the Brahmin sect would no longer dare to look down on our lower world sections. Do you dare to do it? Lin laughed and said, Why wouldn't I dare? Brother Chu, what plan do you have? Just tell me. Lin was not a person who liked to take risks, but he trusted Chu Xiu. At least he knew that Chu Xiu would not harm him, and that was enough. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, The first step of this plan is very simple. Brother Mo, you've been in Eastern Qi for so many years, you should have a good relationship with some of the forces in Eastern Qi, right? These forces should be dissatisfied with the Sanskrit sect's actions, but no one dared to jump out to oppose it. They were probably still hoping that they could get away with it. Therefore, the first step is to make them despair completely, so that they know that no one will come to help them. At this time, the people from the Subodhi Monastery and the Great Light Temple have been integrated into the Heavenly Luo Temple, and their treatment is comparable to that of a core disciple. They are all people from the lower bound. Think of a way to leak this news to the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi, and then let them join forces to ask for help from these two people. Su Yun and Rama should not refuse, but the Heavenly Luo Temple will. This can be said to be a huge blow to the forces in Eastern Qi. I believe that after this, they should understand that luck is useless. At least in the territory of Eastern Qi, no one can help them. Lin said, What if the people from the Heavenly Luo Temple agree to it? Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, Isn't it better if they agree? The Heavenly Luo Temple and the Sanskrit sect are fighting each other. Anyway, both of them have a grudge against me, so it's better for them to die together. As for the martial arts world in Eastern Qi, once these two sects are fighting, they naturally won't have time to care about you, so your crisis will naturally be resolved. Anyway, no matter what choice you make, you will not lose out. You just need to follow the first step of my plan. I will inform you of the next step later. As he said this, Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Luo Feiheng and said, By the way, lend your dragon scale armor to Brother Mo for a period of time. Although he is secretly trying to sow discord in Eastern Qi, if someone in Eastern Qi secretly contacts the Sanskrit sect, Brother Mo will easily be in danger. With the dragon scale armor, at least martial immortals will not be able to hurt Brother Mo immediately. Luo Feiheng had been friends with Lin for many years. Hearing this, he immediately threw the dragon scale armor to him and mumbled, Be careful, don't die. After the matter is done, come and have a drink with us. Lin took the dragon scale armor and chuckled. He said, Don't look down on me. If I can't even handle such a small matter, then I have been the family head for so many years for nothing. Although Tianlin's achievements were nothing compared to the Kunlun devil cult, as the family head of the Mo family, he was definitely not a mediocre person. Ever since he took over the Mo family, Tianlin swept away the rigid rules of the Mo family, got rid of the abuses, and nurtured new forces. In just a few years, the Mo family had been reborn. Previously, the Mo family was at the bottom of the 9 great clans. However, after Tianlin took over the position of the family head, the Mo family was already in the lower middle class. In another 2 generations, it was not impossible for the Mo family to become the upper class. After returning to the Mo family, Tianlin used his son's 1-month birthday as an excuse to send invitations to all the major forces in Eastern Qi. Although Luo Feiheng ridiculed Tianlin's plan to expand his family, it was indeed very effective. Over the years, he had more than a dozen children, and any one of them could be randomly picked out as an excuse to celebrate his 1-month birthday. Moreover, unlike Chu Xiu, who attracted hatred, Tianlin had a gentle personality, and no one could find fault with him. He had a good reputation in Eastern Qi. Although most of the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi thought that Tianlin was making a big fuss about his son's 1-month birthday, they still came to show respect to Tianlin. For example, the Ying family of Shangshui, a martial immortal like the patriarch of the Ying family would naturally not come, but they still sent Ying Bailu. At the gate of the Mo family, Tianlin personally stood at the gate to welcome them. I am very grateful that Taoist Ling Yunzi has come personally. Please come in, come in. I heard that the son of Patriarch Qin is going to be engaged to the eldest daughter of the Shangguan family. Congratulations, when the time comes, our Mo family will definitely prepare a big gift. Brothering, long time no see, your cultivation has improved again. After welcoming everyone into the living room, Mo Tianlin waved his hand and directly ordered his subordinates to close the door. Everyone present was stunned, and they did not know what Mo Tianlin meant. Moreover, it did not seem like Mo Tianlin was going to celebrate his son's 1-month birthday today. There was no banquet in the living room, and there were no performing dancers or servants. Mo Tianlin stood up and bowed to everyone present. Everyone should have guessed that I didn't call all of you here today to celebrate my son's full moon. There are some things I need to discuss with all of you. I believe everyone has heard about the Sanskrit's actions. They are extremely overbearing, and they do not follow any rules. Apart from sect leader Lu of the real martial sect, who has not been threatened by the Sanskrit, who has not been blocked and threatened by the Sanskrit. Although Ning Xuanji did not return to the real martial sect, his appearance in the mortal world was still a deterrent. No matter how overbearing the Sanskrit was, they would not dare to be overbearing to the real martial sect. Therefore, although the Sanskrit did not explicitly say that the real martial sect did not have to hand over their disciples, they were not blocked and threatened like other sections. Lu Changlu quickly said, "Everyone, although the Sanskrit sect did not threaten the true martial arts sect, the true martial arts sect is also dissatisfied with their overbearing actions. Although the real martial sect was not threatened, everyone present was a victim." Lu Changlu dared not show off after getting the upper hand. The patriarch of the Qin family, one of the 9 great clans, said helplessly, "What can we do even if the Sanskrit is overbearing? Who asked him to be so strong? I have asked around. The Sanskrit is the top sect among the Daluotian sections. The Sanskrit sect leader is a peak martial immortal of the 9th heaven. Even if we are dissatisfied, what can we do?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Everyone, if you think like that, then you're too pessimistic. Do we cultivate the martial Tao just to be slaughtered by others? So what if the Sanskrit is powerful? The Sanskrit is not the most powerful sect in the world." The patriarch of the Qin family said hesitantly, "So, Patriarch Mo, do you have a plan?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "I don't have a plan. I just have an idea. At least, we can't just sit here and wait for death, right? I received news that the remaining martial artists from the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery have joined the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple. I heard that their positions are not low, and they are comparable to the direct descendants. We and the Buddhist sect are martial artists from the lower realm. They can't just ignore us when we are in danger, can they? Most importantly, I found out that the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple was already at odds with the Sanskrit when it was still in the Daluotian. It's the same in the lower realm now. If we can persuade the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple to help us, won't we be saved?" The people present looked at each other. They were tempted. If Mo Tianlin were to ask them to stand up against the Sanskrit sect, there was no way they would agree to it. Even if they were angry and aggrieved, they would not send themselves to their deaths at such a time. However, he only asked them to work together to get on good terms with Su Yun and Rama. If they were careful, they might not be noticed by the Sanskrit. It would be much safer. The Chunyang Dao sect's Ling Yunzi was the first to step forward and say, "I am willing to go with you, Patriarch Mo." Chapter 1388. Ever since the Daluotian descended to the lower realm, Ling Yunzi felt that he had been living a miserable life. Even the Chunyang Dao sect felt miserable. When Ling Yunzi first entered the profound understanding of heaven and earth, it was the most glorious time for the entire Chunyang Dao sect. They even joined forces with the righteous sects to launch a war to kill Chu Xiu. In the end, they were badly defeated by Chu Xiu. But at that time, the Chunyang Dao sect was indeed the pinnacle of the Chunyang Dao sect. However, ever since the Daluotian cultivators descended to the lower realm, or rather, the wave of vitality, the Chunyang Dao sect had been having a hard time. Among the 3 great Dao sects, the old celestial master was well prepared. He stepped into the martial immortal realm and went straight to the 3rd heaven. No matter what happened, Longhu Mountain would always be the leader of the Dao sects. The real martial sect was even more frightening. Ning Xuanji was still alive. With Dugu Weiwei missing, he was the most powerful cultivator in the world. Therefore, even though Ning Xuanji had publicly stated that he only had one life of karma with the real martial sect and that he was unwilling to go back to inherit the position of sect master, no one dared to provoke the real martial sect. The Brahmin sect was so overbearing that they were afraid of the real martial sect. Only the Chunyang Dao sect had no trump card. They could only endure when they came to threaten them. Ling Yunzi even fought with the Brahmin sect. In the end, after he defeated a profound understanding of heaven and earth cultivator, they sent a martial immortal to suppress him. Otherwise, the Brahmin sect would not kill innocent people after descending to the lower realm. Moreover, they did not want to ruin their reputation. Ling Yunzi might be killed by the Brahmin sect. Therefore, when he heard Mo Tianlin's suggestion, Ling Yunzi immediately stood up and agreed. Although the Chunyang Dao sect was declining, it still had a great reputation in Eastern Qi. With him taking the lead, everyone present nodded in agreement. Even Ying Bailu agreed on behalf of the Ying family. Although Ying Bailu was not the Ying family's patriarch, he managed most of the family's affairs. He could make the decision himself without discussing it with the Ying family's patriarch. After the discussion, everyone decided that there was no time like the present. They would go to the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple today to ask for help. It was not easy for them to gather so many people, and everyone was here, so they were not afraid that someone would go back on their word and inform the Sanskrit sect. In the Tianluo Treasure Temple, Rama and Su Yun were surprised when they heard that someone was looking for them. Over the years, the Temple of Great Light and the Sabodhi Monastery had split up and hid in the Jianghu. In reality, they had very little contact with the martial artists of Eastern Qi. Of course, even when Chu Xiu was at the height of his power, the people of the Eastern Qi martial world did not report to Chu Xiu and betray their whereabouts. Although the relationship between the two sides could not be said to be good, it could not be said to be bad. For the sake of the fact that they were fellow martial artists in the past, Rama and Void Cloud also found a reception room to receive everyone. When they saw Rama and Su Yun again, after being shocked by Rama's current state, everyone cupped their hands and congratulated them. The Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery had successfully gotten their sect's sites back and had also successfully joined the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple. Su Yun waved his hand with an ugly expression. Actually, there's nothing to congratulate us about. We've gotten back our sect's territory, but it's just a ruin. We still have to cultivate in the Tianluo Treasure Temple. Although the Tianluo Treasure Temple treats us well and shares the same lineage of Buddhism and martial Tao, it's not our inherited sect after all. Our generation is the last generation of the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery. The next generation will all be disciples of the Heavenly Luo Temple. Sect leader Ling Yunzi and sect leader Lu, if you join the Three Pure Temple, but the price is that there will be no more Chunyang Dao sect and martial arts sect in this world. Are you willing? Ling Yunzi and Lu Changlu shook their heads. Of course, they were unwilling. With the inherited sect in their hands, no matter how weak it was, it belonged to them. If they joined another sect, it would belong to someone else. Although he had joined a powerful sect and his benefits were guaranteed, the inheritance of his ancestors had been severed in his hands. To put it bluntly, this was something that he wouldn't be able to face his ancestors in the future when he went to the underworld. Therefore, apart from some sects that did not have a long history of inheritance, sects like the Chunyang Dao sect that had been passed down for nearly 10,000 years would not easily give up their own inheritance. Alright, everyone. Let's cut to the chase. Why have you all come to find us today? Luo Mo opened his mouth and asked. Ling Yunzi sighed and said, We came today to ask for help from the two masters. As he spoke, Ling Yunzi told the two of them what had happened. Originally, these words should have been said by Mo Tianlin, but now it was changed to Ling Yunzi. After all, Sabodhi Zen Temple and Great Light Temple were destroyed by Chu Xiu. Although Mo Tianlin did not participate in it at all, his identity as a good friend of Chu Xiu was still a little sensitive. Therefore, he kept a low profile at this time, lest these two would vent their anger on him. Rama and Su Yun looked at each other and communicated secretly. Then they said, We can't make the decision on this matter. We can mention it to Zen Master Ji Shan, but we can't guarantee whether Zen Master Ji Shan will agree or not. Ling Yunzi quickly said, "It doesn't matter. As long as the two of you mention it, it will be fine." For Su Yun and Rama, this was not a big matter. They could mention it for the sake of their past relationship. However, it mainly depended on Zen Master Ji Shan's attitude. If Zen Master Ji Shan did not agree, they had just joined Tianluo Temple. Naturally, they would not force Tianluo Temple to take action. After Su Yun and Rama turned around and told these things to Zen Master Ji Shan, Zen Master Ji Shan immediately shook his head and said, "Tianluo Temple will not interfere in this matter, and we can't interfere in it." Seeing that Zen Master Ji Shan refused so quickly, Su Yun still felt uncomfortable in his heart. He just nodded and said, "Okay, I will go and refuse them. But Pavilion Master, can I know the reason? Tianluo Temple has a big hatred with Sanskrit for orthodoxy. Why not take advantage of this opportunity to weaken Sanskrit's strength and let the martial arts world of Eastern Qi be grateful? Isn't it a win-win situation?" Zen Master Ji Shan looked at Su Yun in surprise. Su Yun was able to see the gains and losses of a matter so clearly. He was indeed a person who used to be in charge of a great force. Such an existence could directly become the ruler of a pavilion as long as his strength could keep up. Zen Master Ji Shan shook his head gently and explained to Su Yun, "What you said is right, but you don't understand the structure of the Daluotian forces. We and Sanskrit are indeed attacking each other, and we even try our best to weaken each other's strength. But in fact, the real deciding factor is the world-honored one and the master of Sanskrit. Only the supreme experts of the ninth heaven are qualified to decide the key to victory. Apart from these two supreme experts who could decide the outcome of the battle, the most important thing was the inheritance. At present, Tianluo Temple has the upper hand. Your two sects have merged into Tianluo Temple, which is why Sanskrit is so anxious and overbearingly recruited disciples. But even so, Sanskrit is not as good as us. Thus, if we were to interfere with Sanskrit's matters at a time like this, there would only be one result. We would drive Sanskrit completely insane. At that time, I would not be surprised at what those lunatics from Sanskrit would do. My Tianluo Temple is not afraid, but I am afraid that something would happen to you all. Unless you are willing to cultivate in the Tianluo Temple until martial immortal before coming out. The Sanskrit is already declining. We will not be able to eliminate them in this generation. But when you all grow up, you will be able to see an opportunity. There is no need to fight Sanskrit to the death. Remember, right now, you are all like porcelain. Developing your own strength is the most important thing. There is no need to fight Sanskrit to the death. It is not worth it. The game between sects is like the way of chess. There is loss and there is gain. Only by giving up this little bit of benefit right now will you be able to swallow more of the other party's chess pieces in the future. Su Yun laughed bitterly. He did not expect the Tianluo Temple to be unwilling to take action because of them. If it were not for them, the Tianluo Temple would not be able to obtain an enormous advantage in the next generation. Likely, the Tianluo Temple would not give up on this opportunity to increase its reputation and strike at the Sanskrit sect. Of course, Su Yun would not tell them the true reason. He had merely conveyed the Tianluo Temple's intentions. They would not be taking action. At that moment, the disappointment in Ling Yunzi and the others' hearts was even greater than before. It could be said that they had fallen into despair. If it were not for Mo Tianlin's suggestion, they would still be able to endure it. However, after Mo Tianlin's suggestion, they finally had hope. Yet in the end it turned out like this. This made them even more unable to endure it. In fact, there were even some people present that slandered Su Yun and Luo Mo in soft voices. They said that after joining the Tianluo Temple, they no longer considered themselves to be cultivators from the lower realms. They were actually unwilling to even help them with such a small matter. Hearing those words, even Mo Tianlin, the instigator of their actions, could not help but shake his head. Sure enough, these people were not people that could be befriended. It was a favor to help them, and it was their duty not to help them. In the end, they only knew how to blame the heavens and blame others. Such people were not even qualified to be allies. This matter was brought up by Mo Tianlin, so the few of them turned to look at Emo Tianlin. Emo clan leader, what should we do now? Emo Tianlin spread his hands and put on a helpless expression. He said, everyone is asking me, but who should I ask? I have no other choice. The Brahmin sect is powerful. Everyone, please take care of yourselves. After speaking, Emo Tianlin cupped his hands and turned to leave. However, after returning to the Emo clan, he used the array board that Chu Xiu had previously given him to pass the news of his success to Chu Xiu. After receiving the news, Chu Xiu was not surprised by the Tianluo Temple's choice at all. He had guessed correctly. At this time, the Tianluo Temple would definitely choose to peacefully cultivate the cultivators from the Great Light Temple and the Subodhi Monastery who had come to seek refuge. Why would they fight to the death with the Brahmin sect? However, even if the Tianluo Temple was not prepared to make a move, he was prepared to make a move. Chu Xiu used the last trace of mental strength left by the inner demon in his mind to contact the inner demon, who was undercover in the Brahmin sect. Chapter 1389. Even though Inner Demon had remolded his body and became a real person, he still left a trace of his psyche in Chu Xiu's mind, so Chu Xiu could still contact Inner Demon. But this method would cause a tremor in his psyche, and it would consume a lot of his psyche. Now that Inner Demon was the palace master of the illusionary Sky Palace, if he used up too much of his psyche too often, it would raise suspicion. So as long as there were no special circumstances in the Sanskrit, he would not contact Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was the same. After his psyche connected to Inner Demon, Chu Xiu asked, "How does it feel to be human?" Inner Demon's happy voice came through his psyche. "Not bad, the emotions and desires of humans are very interesting. Before, I could only feel the emotions of others, but now I can feel them myself. But it's too easy to imitate them. Sometimes I don't even know if the emotions I show are real or fake." Inner Demon, with Ji Xinlua's identity, could be said to be in his element in the Sanskrit. It was precisely because he could perfectly control the 7 emotions and 6 desires and other emotions that he could detect all kinds of emotions in others and then use the most appropriate way to deal with them. Therefore, in the Sanskrit sect, Heart Demon could be said to have no enemies. Anyone who had interacted with him felt that he was a good person. Even Yama, who had an abnormal personality, was full of praise for Heart Demon. Of course, because he imitated too many things, his emotions were a little fake. Sometimes, he couldn't tell if he was faking it or really feeling the emotions. "Cult Master Chu, you wouldn't contact me if there was nothing important. Tell me, what are you going to do? Are you going to attack the Sanskrit?" Chu Xiu said, "I'm not that arrogant. I'm just using some tricks to plot against the Sanskrit and get some benefits for myself. How's your position in the Sanskrit? Can you influence Renaga and Yama's decision?" Inner Demon said, "Yama is fine. Renaga is more mature, it'll be difficult to influence him." Chu Xiu said, "All right, I only have one mission for you now, and that is to encourage Yama to cause trouble in the Eastern Qi Imperial Court and force the Eastern Qi Imperial Court to demand martial artists. The more the better." Inner Demon guessed what Chu Xiu was thinking. Are you going to make the Sanskrit the target of the entire West Chu? After all, the Heart Demon had stayed in Chu Xiu's mind for a long time. When it came to understanding Chu Xiu, he could be considered to be the type that understood Chu Xiu very well. Chu Xiu said, "I'm just adding fuel to the fire. The Sanskrit are used to being domineering in the Daluocean, but they've forgotten that the situation in the lower realm is more complicated than that of the Daluocean. In the western regions, they only need to face the Sanskrit alone, but in the lower realm, it's different. Even if I don't do anything, the Sanskrit will sooner or later incur the wrath of the heavens and the people if they insist on doing this." Inner Demon smiled. "Understood, I'm good at this kind of thing. I promise I'll take care of it for you." With that, the two of them cut off the connection. Shaking his head, Inner Demon got up and headed towards the Shiva temple. In the eyes of the majority of the Sanskrit warriors, even the warriors of the Shiva palace, Yama was considered to be a mentally unstable person. He was irritable and easily angered, especially when he was in a state of battle. He would easily lose his mind, even more so than the Sanskrit master. At least the Sanskrit master had a kind side that could pull him back at a critical moment. But if Yama fell into such a state of madness, it was basically impossible to pull him back. Therefore, most of the Brahmin sect martial artists always kept a respectful distance from the Yama sect. They respected his strength but didn't want to have too much contact with him. Only an existence like the heart demon, who could understand emotions, could win Yama's favor. Every word she said went straight to the bottom of his heart, making him feel very comfortable. He didn't even get angry once. Therefore, even if Inner Demon wasn't from the Shiva temple, he was more like Yama's confidant than the martial artists from the Shiva temple. Opening the door of the Shiva temple, Inner Demon said with a smile, "Temple Master, I heard that the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi have taken the initiative to send people over?" Yama snorted and said, "Those people in the lower realm are not strong, but they are very cunning. If we don't force them, will they take the initiative to hand over the people? But I have seen those disciples. The number is okay, but the quality is too poor. They can't be compared to the disciples from Tianluo Temple. I think those fellows must be scheming again, keeping all the talented disciples and throwing the mediocre ones to our Sanskrit." Inner Demon shook his head and said, "Temple Master, please calm down. Those who have joined Tianluo Temple are famous in the lower realm, the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery. They naturally can't compare. But I know a place where we can find disciples who are on par with them." "Where?" "Eastern Qi Imperial Court." Yama's eyes showed a hint of doubt. Imperial Court? The Daluotian didn't have the concept of Imperial Court, so Yama had heard of Eastern Qi Imperial Court but didn't know much about it. Inner Demon nodded and said, "It's the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Temple Master, you can think of Eastern Qi Imperial Court as a large sect. Although it's not strong enough, it has a large number of people and can manage the whole Eastern Qi. With such a large territory in hand, there must be many martial artists in Eastern Qi Imperial Court who meet our requirements. So we just need to go to Eastern Qi Imperial Court and ask them to hand over a certain number of martial artists. Maybe the quality of the martial artists will be better than those in the pugilistic world." Yen Mo had never doubted the existence of the heart demon. Moreover, his impression of the cultivators in the mortal world was that they were just like ants. Why would he care about the feelings of ants? So Yama didn't even think about it and directly led the people from Shiva Temple to Eastern Qi Imperial Court. At this time, Inner Demon suddenly said, "Temple Master, do you need to talk to Temple Master Renaga?" Yama snorted and said, "He's just the Temple Master of Brahma Temple, not the leader of Sanskrit. There's no need to tell him everything, let's go directly." There were disputes in the 3 temples of Sanskrit, but Yama had not liked Renaga for a day or two. Part of it was because of his personality, but also because Sanskrit's leader had handed over the control of Sanskrit to Renaga this time, which made Yama unhappy. Inner Demon's lips curled into a faint smile as she followed behind Rama to Eastern Qi. A few days later, in Daliang city of Eastern Qi. When the martial artists of Eastern Qi heard that the people from Sanskrit were coming, they all panicked. It could be said that even when Chu Xiu had come to the Eastern Qi court, they had not been so flustered. Because before, whether it was the pugilistic world forces of Eastern Qi or Chu Xiu, they were not outside the scope of the pugilistic world. Now that they were facing Sanskrit, the martial artists that they could control had long surpassed the pugilistic world. So now Eastern Qi was nervous and fearful. In the palace hall of Eastern Qi, whether it was the royal family, the military or other martial artists of Eastern Qi Imperial Court, they had all gathered, ready to welcome the people of Sanskrit. Lu Haochang sat on the dragon throne. He was already so old that he could barely open his eyes. But even at this point, he had not abdicated the throne, and every year he still had a dozen concubines in his harem. Of course, he was powerless now. He could only watch and not touch. In the future, he didn't know who would benefit from it. When Yama and other martial artists of Sanskrit entered the hall and saw Lu Haochang sitting on the dragon throne, Yama couldn't help frowning and said, "Your imperial court is really interesting. You actually put a dying guy on the main seat. Teske, he is not even a real pallet state, yet you let an ant give orders above your head. What are you thinking?" Yama's words were purely out of curiosity, but all the martial artists of Eastern Qi changed their expressions. In their ears, it was like ridicule. Lu Haochang even coughed violently. In the Eastern Qi imperial family's worship hall, an old man of the royal family stood up and said in a deep voice, "Master, you are a powerhouse of the martial immortal realm. Even if you want to destroy Eastern Qi, it is easy. Why do you have to humiliate us like this?" Yama snorted coldly and said, "Who has the time to come and humiliate you? I'm just here to tell you one thing. I heard that your Eastern Qi imperial court is very big. Well, select 1,000 martial artists with qualified talent and potential and send them to Sanskrit. Remember, they must have superior talent and potential. They can't be worse than the martial artists of Great Light Temple and Subodhi Temple." Upon hearing this, the entire Eastern Qi imperial court's face turned green. Where could they find so many martial artists with talent and potential? They even wanted to compare with Great Light Temple and Subodhi Temple. This was simply a joke. Although these two sects had been destroyed by Chu Xiu once, the disciples that were still alive had all been selected through great waves of elimination, and none of them were ordinary people. If they had 1,000 such martial artists, they would have suppressed the Eastern Qi martial arts world long ago. Lv Haochang forced himself to sit up straight. Coughing, he said in a muffled voice, I, Eastern Qi, am willing to cooperate with you, but these conditions are too harsh. Forgive me for being unable to comply." "Ridiculous!" Yama snorted coldly, and a majestic aura suddenly spread out. Everyone present suddenly had a feeling that they were only one step away from death. "This is not a discussion, but an order. You let a dying ant sit there and discuss these things with me, and I've already tolerated it. Now you, an ant, still dare to make excuses? Do you want to die too slowly? 1 month, I'll only give you 1 month's time. After 1 month, I want to see you at the gate of Sanskrit." After that, Yama waved his hand and left directly with his people, not giving the people of Eastern Qi a chance to explain. When the people of Eastern Qi broke free from the terrifying aura and breathed a sigh of relief, someone subconsciously turned to look at Lu Haochang, only to see Lu Haochang sitting on the dragon throne, staring angrily in front of him, no longer breathing. His Majesty has returned to heaven. Chapter 1390. Lu Haochang was dead. To be precise, he was angered to death by Yama. After all, he was the ruler of a country. Although he was not much, the combined forces of the entire Eastern Qi could be compared to a top-notch sect. Of course, that was in the lower realm. However, Yama treated him like he was an ant. It was disdain that came from the bottom of his heart. It made Lu Haochang feel extremely humiliated and angry. Even when Chu Xiu was in the lower realm, although he did not really take Eastern Qi seriously, he still treated him with respect on the surface and even addressed him as His Majesty. Lu Haochang, who was already on the verge of death, died after being provoked by Yama. This was something that Chu Xiu did not expect. Who would have thought that Lu Haochang, who had been an emperor for his entire life, would have such a low tolerance level? However, it was not a bad thing. With Lu Haochang's death, all the forces of Eastern Qi were extremely angry and aggrieved. A dynasty was the combination of countless forces. This was something that Yama did not understand. Lu Haochang's strength was indeed like that of an ant, and he was even very muddle-headed. However, as long as he sat on the dragon throne, he was the representative of this collective of interests. He was their face. Yama was so angry that Lu Haochang died. Basically, after slapping Eastern Qi's face until it was swollen, he stepped on it ruthlessly. However, even if the people of Eastern Qi were angry, what could they do? What could they do to the Sanskrit sect? What could they do to an 8th heaven martial immortal expert? They could only endure it and settle their own matters first. After Lu Haochang's death, Eastern Qi started another internal strife. However, this internal strife was very short. It ended in less than 3 days. The final winner was the second prince, Lu Longguang. After successfully ascending to the throne of Eastern Qi, he began to hold the funeral and enthronement ceremony. He invited the envoys of Northern Yan and West Chu, as well as the major sects in Jianghu. The Kunlun Devil cult was the only sect in the lower realm that could compete with the top Daluotian forces. Naturally, they were invited as well. However, Eastern Qi thought that the Kunlun Devil cult would only send some emissaries. He did not expect that it would be Chu Xiu himself. Upon hearing this news, LV Longguang and a group of Eastern Qi's higher-ups personally came out to greet Chu Xiu with great respect. After the incident with Yama, they finally understood how powerful a martial immortal was compared to a mortal's strength. It could be said that a martial immortal was like a real demigod. Even the weakest martial immortal in Eastern Qi would not be able to withstand his mortal strength. After so many years of not seeing each other, the young and valiant LV Longguang of the past had already become a middle-aged man with graying temples. His temperament was no longer as sharp and ambitious as before. Now, he seemed to be very cautious. Chu Xiu sighed and cupped his hands together. I did not expect the late emperor to pass away in such a way. But your majesty, there is no need to be sad. Everyone dies. Compared to the previous emperors, the late emperor has lived a long life. LV Longguang thought to himself, why should I be sad? I am more than happy that the old thing is dead. If he had lived longer, he would have killed himself. But now that he is dead, the mess of Eastern Qi is left to me. LV Longguang sighed. Thank you, Cult Master Chu, for your consolation. I can accept my father's death. But when I think of the humiliation and threats from the Sanskrit, I feel so wronged. Eastern Qi, feel so wronged. In front of Chu Xiu, LV Longguang, the new emperor of Eastern Qi, was extremely respectful. He did not even address himself as emperor. Of course, this was not only because of Chu Xiu's strength, but also because of Chu Xiu's attitude. When Chu Xiu went to Eastern Qi and threatened the Phantom King, Chao Ying, they thought that Chu Xiu was overbearing and lawless. But after witnessing Yanma's actions, they finally understood what it meant to be overbearing and lawless. At least Chu Xiu abided by the rules of the lower realm. He addressed LV Longguang as His Majesty. This time, he came personally to pay respects to Lu Haochang and to attend the coronation ceremony. This made LV Longguang and the people of Eastern Qi feel inexplicably touched. They felt that they were valued and favored by someone. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and shook his head. Let it go, Your Majesty. A new era has begun in the Daluotian lower realm. This is an era of great competition. The rules of the past are no longer applicable. Everyone is determined by their strength. In the past, in northern Yen, there were even sects that sought refuge with the martial immortals of the upper realm. They then occupied the palace of the northern Yen emperor. They did not respect the northern Yen royalty at all. Although Eastern Qi and northern Yen were enemies, when LV Longguang heard this news, he felt that they were in the same boat. How was the matter handled in the end? LV Longguang asked. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. I supported the northern Yen emperor, Xiang Li, to the throne. Who doesn't know that northern Yen is under the control of the Holy Church? They dared to be rude to the northern Yen emperor and did not take the northern Yen emperor seriously. That means they did not take me, Chu Xiu, or the Holy Church seriously. In the end, I threw the guy who sought refuge with Gu Zun to my men. He should be dead by now. I also drove Gu Zun out of northern Yen. I don't think he dares to come back. He even invited Fang Daochen of the Star River Martial School to help. What a joke! The Star River Martial School has yet to gain a firm foothold in Eastern Qi. They dared to meddle in the affairs of northern Yen. I also chased them out. Chu Xiu's words made LV Longguang's blood boil. He was even envious of his counterpart in the north. This was the confidence that came from having a backer. This was the confidence that came from strength. Although it was uncomfortable to be a vassal now that he was the emperor, it was better than being threatened like this. LV Longguang gritted his teeth. Cult Master Chu, you should know the situation of Eastern Qi. The Sanskrit cult has gone too far. I, Eastern Qi, cannot hold on any longer. If you are willing to save me, Eastern Qi, I, Eastern Qi, am willing to make the Kunlun Devil cult the national religion. I, Cult Master Chu, will follow your lead. The surrounding higher-ups of Eastern Qi all jumped in fright. LV Longguang had not discussed this with them. He had said it on his own accord. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Do you know that by doing this, you've completely offended the Sanskrit sect? Not only that, you've also been tied to our Kunlun demon sect. Once something happens to our Kunlun demon sect, your Eastern Qi kingdom will suffer as well. LV Longguang was just being impulsive. But now, he nodded firmly. I can't do anything about it now. How can I care about the future? The Sanskrit cult wants 1,000 disciples who are not inferior to the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery. How can I, Eastern Qi, provide them? Instead of being blamed and threatened by the Sanskrit cult, I might as well turn against them now. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. It's rare for your majesty to have such decisiveness and determination. I have a grudge against the Sanskrit cult as well. Of course, I'm willing to help your majesty. But it's not enough to rely on Eastern Qi alone. We need to gather the power of the entire Eastern Qi martial arts world to force the Sanskrit cult. We need to let them know that the people of the lower realm are not to be trifled with. LV Longguang nodded. Cult Master Chu, just tell me what you want to do. I will do as you say. Good. The Ying family's patriarch and Lu Changlu should be here, right? I want to meet them. Help me make the arrangements. In the entire Eastern Qi martial arts world, there were only two forces that had prestige and reputation. If they could take them down, they would be able to take down 90% of the forces in the Eastern Qi martial arts world. The Ying family was the leader of the 9 great clans. Now that the Ying family's patriarch had become a martial immortal, they had both power and reputation. As for the true martial sect, it was because of Ning Xuanji. LV Haochang's funeral and LV Longguang's ascension to the throne, these two matters were more than enough for the Ying family's patriarch to make a personal visit. However, after exchanging a few pleasantries, the Ying family's patriarch and Ying Bailu were summoned to a separate hall. The two were puzzled. As soon as they opened the door, they saw Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had a faint smile on his face. Senior Ying, Brother Ying, how have you been? Cult Master Chu, why are you here? The Ying family's patriarch's tone was filled with vigilance. From his point of view, anything related to Chu Xiu was definitely not a good thing. LV Longguang, who was behind them, immediately closed the door and pretended to be having a private conversation. Is it strange for me to be here when such a big thing has happened in Eastern Qi? Chu Xiu asked in return. Then, he said in a deep voice, of course, I'm here for one more thing. For the future of the Eastern Qi martial arts world. How does Senior Ying feel about the Sanskrit sect's oppression and threats? It's been a long time since you felt so aggrieved. The Sanskrit sect has caused great indignation in Eastern Qi. They don't respect the Eastern Qi martial arts world or the rules of the lower realm at all. Senior Ying, don't you feel anything about these things? The Ying family's patriarch raised his eyebrows. What does this have to do with Cult Master Chu? He could roughly guess Chu Xiu's intentions. However, due to Chu Xiu's previous reputation, he felt that there was a conspiracy behind it. He dared not simply trust Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu pointed at LV Longguang. Of course it has something to do with me. His Majesty personally invited me here to uphold justice for Eastern Qi. He even allowed the Kunlun devil cult to become the national religion of Eastern Qi. Do you think this has anything to do with me? Senior Ying, I know you're wary of me. In the past, we belonged to the righteous and the demonic paths, and there might have been some misunderstandings between us. However, things are different now. The Daluotian lower realm and a new era has begun. The old ways are meaningless now. You know what the Sanskrit sect is doing, but you can't fight back. You've just become a martial immortal and are in high spirits. However, you find yourself still a weakling in the eyes of others. That must be a terrible feeling. The Ying family is the leader of the 9 great clans. If you're willing to be oppressed and exploited by the Sanskrit sect, then forget what I said. However, Senior Ying, you've dominated the pugilistic world for your entire life. Are you willing to be like this? I heard that you're going to inherit the position of patriarch soon. Are you willing to be the patriarch of the Ying family like this? The Ying family's patriarch and Ying Bailu fell silent. Although they had heard that Chu Xiu was eloquent, they had always thought that he was only good at sowing discord and stirring up trouble. However, Chu Xiu's every word could be said to have struck a chord in their hearts. Chapter 1391. Be it the Ying family's patriarch or Ying Bailu, they were not the kind of people who would allow themselves to be trampled upon by others. Otherwise, they would not have agreed to Mo Tianlin's proposal to look for Rama and Shuyun. They had already experienced despair that time. Now that they saw that Chu Xiu wanted to help, even though they were on opposing sides, they could not help but be tempted. Cult Master Chu, how confident are you? Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, after all, I'm an outsider in Eastern Qi. If I'm alone, I only have a 50% chance. If the Eastern Qi martial world does not plan to resist, I, an outsider, will not be able to turn the situation around. However, if the Eastern Qi martial world works together, I have full confidence that the Sanskrit sect will not dare to make a move against us. The Ying family's patriarch slammed the table and shouted, good! This time, I will join hands with Cult Master Chu. I hope that Cult Master Chu will not disappoint I. Those who have worked with me, Chu Xiu, have never been disappointed. Chu Xiu gave LV Longguang a look. After a while, LV Longguang went out and brought Lu Changlu in. Seeing that Chu Xiu and the Ying family's patriarch were here, Lu Changlu was stunned. Ying family patriarch, Cult Master Chu, what are you doing here? Don't panic, Sect Master Lu. We are here to discuss the future of the Eastern Qi martial world. Then, Chu Xiu told Lu Changlu what he had told the Ying family's patriarch. Finally, Chu Xiu added, Sect Master Lu, I know that the Sanskrit sect is not targeting you this time. In fact, you can stay out of this. But Sect Leader Lu, do you really want to see the martial arts world of Eastern Qi being oppressed by the Sanskrit sect? Also, in Eastern Qi, the true martial arts sect is the state religion of the Eastern Qi imperial court, but the Sanskrit sect still attacked when they should. Obviously, they don't respect the true martial arts sect at all. How can you tolerate all this? Lu Changlu smiled bitterly and said, so what if I can't bear it? The Sanskrit sect didn't do anything because they were afraid of the patriarch. I wanted to help, but it was useless even if I went to the Sanskrit sect to plead on behalf of the true martial arts sect. By the way, Cult Master Chu, where did the patriarch go with you in the end? Why doesn't he recognize our true martial arts sect? Chu Xiu waved his hand and said mysteriously, Senior Ning, of course, went to pursue his own peak of the Great Way. It's not that he didn't take the martial arts cult seriously, but he was worried that his karma would affect the real martial arts cult. With Senior Ning's current strength, what he is pursuing is something that you can't even imagine. So, it's best if you don't come into contact with him. Even Chu Xiu didn't know what he was talking about, but Lu Changlu seemed to think that it made sense. Chu Xiu continued, but the legacy that Senior Ning left behind is your biggest trump card, Sect Leader Lu. If you don't use it now, it'll be a waste. Lu Changlu couldn't help but ask, then how should I use it? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, it's simple. Take a gamble. Bet that the Sanskrit sect won't dare to touch the true martial arts sect, and bet that the Sanskrit sect won't risk the public's wrath to touch all the martial artists in Eastern Qi. Don't think too highly of the Sanskrit sect. As long as all the martial artists in Eastern Qi unite and stand in front of the Sanskrit sect, they won't dare to kill you even if you ask them to. The Ying family's patriarch couldn't help but ask, what if the Sanskrit sect really dares to kill us? Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, then it's my turn to take action. The mortal world has its own rules, and the Daluotian people have their own rules too. Before the mortal world came here, the rules were set by the Taoist master and all the Daluotian forces. Now that the Sanskrit sect's patriarch is not here, I don't believe that they would dare to commit a massacre in Eastern Qi. Moreover, as long as I'm here, the Sanskrit sect won't have the chance to start a massacre. The Ying family's patriarch and Lu Changlu looked at each other and nodded slightly. They chose to believe in Chu Xiu, not because they approved of Chu Xiu, but because the Sanskrit sect had gone too far. Although Chu Xiu belonged to the orthodox sect and the demon sect, he was still a sect in the mortal world, and to some extent he could be considered as one of them. But the Sanskrit sect was an outsider who was overbearing and vile. With such a comparison, they naturally knew what to choose. After the secret discussion, the two forces immediately informed other small forces in Eastern Qi. The Eastern Qi imperial court, the Ying family, the head of the 9 great families, and the true martial sect with Ning Xuanji's halo, could basically deal with all the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi. So a month later, all the military forces and elites of the Eastern Qi imperial court, as well as all the leaders and elites of the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi, had gathered at the gate of the Sanskrit sect. How many people could there be in total? There were already more than 100,000 of them, and they were so dense that they could even surround the entire Sanskrit sect. The gate of the Sanskrit sect was pushed open, and a beautiful woman walked out. She was covered in all kinds of golden ornaments. She was one of the few female martial immortals in the Sanskrit sect, Parva, the palace master of the divine goddess palace of the Shiva temple. According to the agreement, today was the day Eastern Qi and the martial arts forces would send their disciples into the Sanskrit sect. So Yen Mo had specially sent Parva over. Yen Mo knew that he couldn't control his temper, so he had specially sent Parva over. After all, she was a woman and she was beautiful. She would definitely make the new disciples of the Sanskrit sect feel more at ease. Although Parva was a woman, she was also a martial immortal. At this time, she had to use her body to welcome these new disciples. She was a little dissatisfied. But when she went out and saw so many martial artists gathered here, Parva immediately frowned. So many of you are here to join the Sanskrit sect? The Ying family's patriarch shook his head and said, "Of course not. We have painstakingly trained the disciples. Why should they join the Sanskrit sect?" Parva's expression changed abruptly. Her beautiful face contorted with a trace of coldness. Most of the martial artists in Shiva temple were battle-hungry lunatics. Even Parva was the same. Upon hearing that, a rhythmic wave rippled around her, and the void rippled under the wave, and the primal chi exploded. "How dare you? Then what are you planning to do with such a big battle formation today?" Parva looked at the densely packed martial artists and sneered. "Do you really think that you can defeat the Sanskrit sect with numbers? No matter how many of you have, in the eyes of the Sanskrit sect, you are just a bunch of ants and pigs that can be killed with a wave of our hand." The Ying family's patriarch said in a deep voice, "In the eyes of the Sanskrit sect, we may indeed be ants and pigs, but we will not allow ourselves to be slaughtered." Lu Changlu sighed, and he also stepped forward. "We, the Eastern Qi martial artists, know that we are no match for the Sanskrit sect. You can slaughter us, the Eastern Qi martial artists, but we will not yield." "How dare you?" Parva shouted angrily, but she suddenly didn't know what to say, because she suddenly realized that she really couldn't do anything to the other party. In the past, when they had just arrived in the Daluotian world, they could slaughter the Daluotian barbarians because they were not of the same race, and in order to survive, they had to kill. But before they came to the lower realm, the many Daluotian experts had already decided that although they had been separated from the ancestral land in the lower realm for 10,000 years, they were still of the same race. They could have disputes, but they were not allowed to kill the innocent. In a utilitarian way, martial artists in the lower realm could also become their disciples, and if they killed all of them, it would affect the other sections. Moreover, the Daluotian had just come to the lower realm, and in the eyes of these martial artists, the Daluotian sects were a whole. It was not a big deal if they killed people, but if they killed people, it would affect the reputation of the entire Daluotian world, and everyone would be implicated. For the entire Shiva palace, although they had been fighting with the Heavenly Treasure Temple all year round, there were 100,000 people in front of them. Even if the people in front of them were weak, they were still living people, and they were carrying 100,000 lives on their shoulders. Not only Parva couldn't bear such a huge karma, but the entire Sanskrit sect couldn't bear it. Moreover, the Sanskrit sect had clearly not threatened the real martial sect, but the real martial sect had joined in. Who would dare to provoke the old Taoist behind them? Even now, when Lu Changlu had killed himself in front of the Sanskrit sect, they had to stop him and let him die further away. Dying in front of the Sanskrit sect would be a big problem. When the Ing family's patriarch and the others saw Parva standing there in a daze, they immediately felt relieved. Although they had listened to Chu Xiu's words and put up such a big fight, they were actually using their own lives to threaten the other party. If the other party really attacked, they could only rely on Chu Xiu. It didn't feel good to rely on others for their lives. Just when Parva was in a dilemma, Yanma also noticed the movement outside and walked out of the Sanskrit sect. He looked around at the people present and said coldly, "Forced to abdicate? Rebel? I gave you a chance, but what do you want now? Do you really think that the Sanskrit sect is a bunch of hypocritical bald donkeys who don't dare to kill us?" After saying that, Yanma glared at Parva. Once this woman was on the battlefield, her strength was not bad, but her character was too indecisive, and she was not suitable to handle such a big matter. Everyone had fear in their hearts. It was fine if one person was not afraid of death, but how could 100,000 people not be afraid of death? As long as the few leaders were killed, the others would naturally be afraid of being defeated. He didn't dare to touch Lu Changlu, because the sect leader of the Sanskrit sect had told them about how terrifying the old Taoist was. But for the others, Yanma didn't have such scruples. Yanma looked at the Ing family's patriarch, and the void trembled, and a black destructive force condensed in the air, instantly forming a long blade made of destructive force. It pierced through space and time, and in the next moment, appeared in front of the Ing family's patriarch. But at this moment, the Buddha's light descended, and the cross-shaped lotus seal fell, instantly shattering the destructive force. "Chu Xiu!" Yanma shouted angrily, and his eyes flickered with dense killing intent. Chapter 1392. If there was anyone in Sanskrit who hated Chu Xiu the most, it was not the leader of Sanskrit, but Yanma. When Chu Xiu destroyed Vishnu Palace, he was just as angry as other Sanskrit martial artists, but when Chu Xiu killed Yin Tuolyuo, it made him mad with hatred. Yin Tuolyuo was not his disciple, but he was the successor chosen by him, and he was also the successor that he was most optimistic about. He thought that the successor of the next generation could surpass Brahma Palace. At that time, Yin Tuolyuo actually refused to guard Vishnu Palace. It was he who agreed with Yin Tuolyuo to guard Vishnu Palace, resulting in Yin Tuolyuo's death. It also made Yanma blame himself. At this time, seeing Chu Xiu, Yanma's eyes suddenly turned red. "I was wondering who provoked this group of people. It turns out it was you. Good. Today you don't have to leave. I want to see whether you can release that person first, or I can kill you first." As Yanma's voice fell, his body was suddenly surrounded by countless blood, forming a huge blood cocoon. Countless pitch-black flames roasted the blood cocoon. Finally breaking it, a handsome, tall young man stepped out. His body was surrounded by the world-destroying fire. His killing intent was soaring. Chu Xiu immediately frowned. This Yanma must have a mental problem. Why does he seem to hate me more than the leader of Sanskrit? He actually used his real body at the beginning. This secret method of Shiva Palace Yanma was very famous in the western region. Although he was not young, he had a secret method that could seal his chi and blood when he was young, and when he used it in battle, he could at any time guarantee his strength at the peak state. Therefore, although he usually looked like a little old man, in fact, that was not his peak state, but most of his battle strength was sealed. Once Yanma used this secret method, he could display the battle strength of the peak of the 8th heaven of martial immortal. He could be on par with Tian Luo Baocha, the Transformation Pavilion's Zen Master Jishan. Yama, who was at his peak, held a huge bow in his hand. The purest power of annihilation condensed into a black arrow. When the arrow was released, everything in front of it was destroyed. It was so domineering that it could even melt the laws of nature. It was comparable to a divine art. At the gate of heaven, the leader of Sanskrit also used this trick to deal with Zhong Shinxiu, but Zhong Shinxiu easily resolved it. But at this time, facing this arrow, even though Chu Xiu had reached the 5th heaven and his strength had greatly improved, he still felt a trace of pressure. In the past, when Yue Kong stepped into the 8th heavenly layer, He was only a demonized 8th heavenly layer. Even his rationality had disappeared, and he could only use his instinctive power to attack. However, a true martial artist at the peak of the 8th heaven should be like Yen Mo, who was able to exert every strand of power to the extreme, or even surpass his own limits. This arrow could completely take on a divine ability head-on. Not only was the cross-shaped lotus seal unable to suppress it, it even felt a slight suppression effect. This arrow of his condensed power of the world was not just pure power, but the power of destruction that was close to the origin. His arrow contained the ultimate power of annihilation. It wasn't just pure power, but the power of annihilation, which was close to the origin of life and death. This arrow was specially used to break the fancy magic of Tianluo Baosha. However, Chu Xiu had actually blocked it with the magic of Buddhism. Could it be that his understanding of Buddhism was even stronger than that of the bald donkey from Tianluo Baosha sect? But this arrow was specifically used to break the heavenly Luo treasure temple's fancy magical power, but Chu Xiu actually used a Buddhist magical power to block it. Could it be that his understanding of Buddhist cultivation methods was even greater than that of the heavenly Luo treasure temple? But this was not important. At this time, Yanma's fighting spirit and killing intent had surged to the extreme. A black dragon spear appeared in his hand. Its triangular head was the tip of the spear, and its eyes glowed with a scarlet light. Blood-colored killing intent and pitch-black demonic aura bloomed at the same time as it stabbed at Chu Xiu. Everywhere it passed, the space was pierced and the rules were torn apart. It was unstoppable. In the next moment, Chu Xiu used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The 1,000-foot-long body of the demon god stood on the ground, and the indestructible holy demonic body was added to his body. However, this time, it did not form armor. Instead, it turned into a long saber composed entirely of demonic aura and Buddhist light. It was 90% similar to the breaking array. To be more precise, it was the breaking array. However, it was a saber formed by the power of the indestructible holy demonic body, while the breaking array itself was condensed into a saber soul. Using the body of the demon god to slash out a heaven-devouring saber, the power seemed to be able to devour the heavens and the earth. Everywhere it passed, a huge black hole devoured everything, including the power of rules. After stepping into the 5th level, Chu Xiu's biggest gain was his control over the power of rules. Previously, Chu Xiu could use the indestructible holy demonic body while using the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Now, not only could Chu Xiu use the indestructible holy demonic body, but he could also use a powerful saber technique like the heaven-devouring saber. The superposition of mystiques and martial techniques was not as simple as 1 + 1. The power was almost multiplied. Of course, while the power was increasing, the consumption was also huge. If Yen Mo hadn't immediately displayed his peak state, Chu Xiu wouldn't have been able to display the results of his breakthrough to the 5th heavenly layer in such a short time. Against Yama in such a state, ordinary martial skills would basically be useless. Chu Xiu's heaven-devouring saber collided with Yen Mo's spear. Both sides were using extremely violent mystiques. To the martial artists below, the powerful shockwaves seemed like they were going to destroy the world. Fortunately, they had subconsciously leaped into the air the moment they attacked. Otherwise, the shockwaves would have been even greater. At this time, the Dharma idol of Shiva also appeared behind Yen Mo. It had 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. They smashed towards Chu Xiu's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Among the people present, only the Ying family patriarch could understand the battle between Chu Xiu and Yen Mo. He could truly feel how terrifying these two were. The use of power and the control of rules were at a level that he did not even dare to imagine. Although both sides were martial immortals, the Ying family patriarch had to admit dejectedly that if he were to fight with these two, he would not even last 3 moves. In fact, he would be severely injured in the first move. At this time, Chu Xiu's voice suddenly sounded, "Order everyone to attack the Sanskrit sect." The Ying family patriarch was shocked. It was already good enough that the Sanskrit sect did not attack them. How could they dare to attack the Sanskrit sect? Chu Xiu shouted sternly again, "Don't forget what we've said before." As a fifth heaven celestial, Chu Xiu had used almost all his strength to fight against an eighth heaven celestial. He only wanted to force the Sanskrit sect to stop and meddle in the fate of Eastern Qi. He did not want to fight to the death with the Sanskrit sect. The Ying family patriarch gritted his teeth and shouted, "Attack!" If the Ying family patriarch had ordered them to attack the Sanskrit sect, no one would have dared to do so except for the people of the Ying family and the cultivators of Eastern Qi. However, when they saw that Chu Xiu was actually able to fight Yen Mo so well, the fear in their hearts lessened a lot. The unknown was the most terrifying. They did not understand the Sanskrit sect, so they were afraid of it. However, they understood Chu Xiu. Seeing Chu Xiu fighting the Sanskrit sect head-on, although they did not know what it meant, it gave them some confidence. When Yen Mo saw the movement below, his expression changed, and he woke up from his murderous and battle intent. Although he was hot-tempered, he could see the big picture. If the cultivators of Eastern Qi died in front of the Sanskrit sect, regardless of whether Lu Changlu was hurt or not, the death of the others would be a big deal. At the very least, the cause and effect would be unclear, and they might even be isolated by the Daluotian and the lower bound. Chu Xiu's actions were simply a scam. He was using the lives of all the cultivators of Eastern Qi to scam the Sanskrit sect. However, there was nothing they could do. They could not kill Chu Xiu at this time, but if they did not kill him, would they just sit back and watch the entire Eastern Qi martial world attack the Sanskrit sect? That would be even more humiliating. At this moment, a voice rang out from below. "Stop! All of you stop!" Hearing the voice, Yen Mo gritted his teeth and transformed back into the short, skinny old man, and returned to the Sanskrit sect. Chu Xiu also waved his hand and ordered the Ying family patriarch and the others to stop attacking. The person who had spoken was the Lord of the Brahma Temple, Renaga. Renaga did not come out despite the huge commotion outside, because he was in seclusion. Originally, Renaga should have been in charge of the Sanskrit sect. However, because the matter of forcefully recruiting disciples was suggested by Yen Mo, and the process was simple and violent, he left it to the people of Shiva Temple to handle while he went into seclusion. In Renaga's opinion, the people of Shiva Temple were vicious, so they were the most suitable person to handle this matter. However, he did not expect to see such a scene when he was woken up by his disciple. When Renaja found out from his disciple what Yama had been up to, he wanted nothing more than to strangle him to death. Simple and violent. The things that Yen Mo had done were so simple and violent that it was beyond the use of his brain. Seeing Yen Mo return to his side, Renaga subconsciously wanted to slap him, but Yen Mo pointed his dragon spear at him with a dark expression. "Renaga, do you think you're the sect leader? That you can slap whoever you want? Don't forget who you are." Renaga retracted his hand and shouted angrily, "You've caused such a huge mess, and you still have the nerve to say that? You still have the nerve to question me in such a righteous manner? In the end, I'm the one who has to clean up your mess. When the sect leader returns, I will definitely report this matter to the sect leader." Yen Mo sneered, "As you wish." Even now, Yen Mo did not think that he had done anything wrong. It was all because of that bastard Chu Xiu who had instigated things in the dark. Renaga did not care about Yen Mo anymore. He took a deep breath and asked Chu Xiu in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, what are you trying to do?" Chapter 1393. As the leader of the Brahma Temple, most of the time, he helped the leader of the Brahma sect manage the sect. Renaja was undoubtedly more rational than Yama. Today's situation might have been caused by Chu Xiu's instigation in the dark, but it was mostly because Yen Mo had gone too far. He really treated the cultivators of the lower realms as pigs and ants that he could slaughter at will. This was why he had offended all the forces in the lower realms, resulting in the current situation. However, it seemed that Chu Xiu was still the core of the group. As long as he could deal with Chu Xiu, the rest would be easy to deal with. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Leader Renaja, it's not what I want, but what your Brahma sect wants." The entire Eastern Qi pugilistic world has been threatened by you to hand over their disciples. You're basically destroying their foundation. Yama even angered the emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang, to death. He doesn't respect the Eastern Qi imperial court at all. Isn't this too much? Renaja glared fiercely at Yanma. This was all his fault. He agreed that Yama could be more aggressive and forceful in his actions, but that didn't mean he didn't have a brain. Yama snorted indifferently. He didn't want this to happen. Who knew that Ant would be so weak? It was unheard of for him to be angered to death. Renaja looked at the cultivators present and knew that the Brahma sect's reputation was going to be tarnished. He sighed and said, "Everyone, this is actually a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. Leader Yama is a bit rough, so you've all misunderstood the Brahma sect's intentions. My Sanskrit sect has sent all of you disciples to the Sanskrit sect because we want to teach them the true Zenith Heaven high-level martial Tao. If you want to come to our Brahma sect and listen to our experts explain the martial path, that's fine too. There are many people here who have reached the profound understanding of heaven and earth. Don't you all want to reach the realm above martial immortal? What our Brahma sect teaches is the strongest martial path of the martial immortal realm." Renaja's words did move the crowd. Previously, because of the essence Qi wave, many people had stepped into the heaven and earth mystic opening realm through the essence Qi wave. However, to be able to step into that realm was already a lucky opportunity for them. Martial immortals were legendary existences that they did not even dare to think about. And now, the Sanskrit Church had actually taken the initiative to reveal their martial immortal level cultivation experiences and secret techniques. This caused them to be unable to contain their excitement. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Temple Master Renaga, you're a little too stingy to think that you can win everyone over with just this little bit of benefit. Everyone, the Holy Church has decided to join forces with the Eastern Qi Imperial Court's Jixia Martial Arts Academy to expand the academy. At that time, there will be experts in the martial immortal realm who will come and give lectures. The martial immortal realm is not mysterious, nor is it some precious secret technique or treasure. Every martial artist in this world is qualified to step onto the peak and become a martial immortal. The providence of the lower realm was also providence. Chu Xiu had never had the chance to interfere in Eastern Qi before. This time, he finally had the chance and reason to do so. How could he give it up? The elder prince from the Eastern Qi Imperial Court was stunned. This was because Chu Xiu had never mentioned this to him before. However, the elder prince was only stunned for a moment before he stepped forward and said, "That's right. Everyone in the Eastern Qi's Jixia Martial Arts Academy knows that after we cooperate with Cult Master Chu, we will still follow the same rules as before. We will not reject anyone." This was a good thing no matter how one thought about it. The Eastern Qi Imperial Court had no reason to reject it. If Chu Xiu had directly established a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult in Eastern Qi, there might have been people who objected. After all, to the martial artists in the lower realm, the idea that the righteous and demonic paths were irreconcilable had long been instilled in their minds. Now that both sides were no longer enemies, they were even forced to be their own teachers. This made them feel a little uncomfortable. However, the Jixia Martial Arts Academy was different. The Jixia Martial Arts Academy in Eastern Qi had a long history. Even some of the rogue martial artists in Eastern Qi came from the Jixia Martial Arts Academy. In this aspect, the Jixia Martial Arts Academy had an advantage over the Xinghe Martial Arts Academy. Although the Xinghe Martial Arts Academy was a Daluotian force and everyone knew that it was extremely powerful, it was still an outsider. Therefore, during this period of time, it had only attracted a portion of rogue martial artists. No major sects had joined. Renaga looked coldly at Chu Xiu. Although he hated Chu Xiu so much that he gnashed his teeth, there was nothing he could do. Fine. The Buddhist cult doesn't want these disciples and martial artists anymore. Take all of them and leave. Chu Xiu said calmly, "It's easy to leave, but the Eastern Qi martial artists are afraid of the Buddhist cult's revenge. The Buddhist cult is powerful. Small sects like the Eastern Qi martial artists can't withstand the Buddhist cult's might. How about this, Hall Master Renaga, You swear in the name of the Buddhist cult's 3 gods that you won't take revenge on the Eastern Qi martial artists for what happened today. Then we will leave. What do you think? Chu Xiu. Don't go overboard. Renaga squeezed the words out of his mouth. Chu Xiu snorted coldly. I'm going overboard? If it wasn't for the Buddhist cult's bullying and forcing everyone to this state, how could this have happened? If Hall Master Renaga thinks that I'm going overboard, then fine. I won't interfere in this matter anymore. Let's just fight it out. Even if the Buddhist cult can slaughter the entire Eastern Qi martial artists, they will still be covered in blood that can't be washed away. Renaga looked sullen. At the end, he said expressionlessly, on behalf of the Buddhist cult, Renaga, swear to the 3 gods that I will never take revenge on the Eastern Qi martial artists for what happened today. Is that enough? Chu Xiu smiled. Enough, of course it's enough. Everyone, the Buddhist cult is trustworthy. Let's leave. In the eyes of the crowd, Chu Xiu's prestige had reached an unprecedented level. After hearing his words, the Eastern Qi martial artists retreated in an orderly manner. When they were out of the Buddhist cult's territory, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. The Ying family patriarch bowed to Chu Xiu. Thank you, Cult Master Chu, for your help this time. We are extremely grateful. If it wasn't for Cult Master Chu, we wouldn't have known that our combined strength could be so strong. The power of an ant can shake the heavens. Even some of the Daluotian martial immortals didn't know much about the fight for providence, let alone the cultivators of Eastern Qi. Therefore, in their eyes, this time, Chu Xiu really did help out voluntarily. He didn't get any benefits himself. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Everyone, if you really think so, then you are gravely mistaken. If you work together again in the future and use the same method, you will probably die a horrible death. You can only burn incense and chant scriptures once. One more time and you can go directly to the afterlife. The Buddhist cult's setback this time is not because everyone's combined strength is strong, but because the Buddhist cult isn't strong enough. The Buddhist cult has too many concerns. They are concerned about the rules set by everyone in the lower realm, about karma, about their reputation, and most of all about Senior Ning Xuanji. All these factors together are what caused the Buddhist cult to setback. If they didn't have these concerns, do you think the Buddhist cult wouldn't dare to kill? To put it bluntly, think about 500 years ago. Is it useful to have more people? At certain times, like now, it's useful. But most of the time, it still depends on strength. Chu Xiu's words poured a bucket of cold water over the Ying family's patriarch, and the others immediately fell silent. Indeed, this time, they had only used the Buddhist cult's concerns to turn the tables. If it were 500 years ago when Dugu Weiwei was still around, the Kunlun devil cult would have already dominated the world. Who would dare to challenge them like this? Basically, they would not be able to return. After everyone left with a slightly heavy heart, Chu Xiu also returned to the Eastern Qi's palace. Of course, LV Longguang wouldn't go personally. Instead, he waited for news in the palace. When Chu Xiu and the others took the lead in forcing the Buddhist cult to retreat, LV Longguang had already received the news. When he saw Chu Xiu's return, he immediately led the civil and military officials of Eastern Qi to welcome him. Their attitude could be said to be extremely respectful. Cult Master Chu saved Eastern Qi from danger. We, the entire Eastern Qi, will remember this in our hearts. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Your Majesty, you're too kind. As a martial artist from the lower realm, this is what I should do. Although I'm from the devil path, I'm also a martial artist from the lower realm. How could I bear to see all of you being threatened by the Buddhist cult? Chu Xiu's words even changed the impression that many of the Eastern Qi martial artists present had of Chu Xiu. In the past, people had said that the Kunlun devil cult was cruel, and that Chu Xiu was an extremely vicious demon. Now, it seemed that this was all the jealousy and slander of those hypocrites. They were obviously jealous of Cult Master Chu's strength, and that was why they slandered the Kunlun devil cult. They were all fighting and killing in the pugilistic world. Who could be better than the other? At least now they knew that it was Chu Xiu who had saved them. Therefore, their impression of Chu Xiu had been renewed. After being complimented by LV Longguang, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice. Next, the elder of my sacred cult, Elder Wuxia, will bring a group of martial artists to Eastern Qi personally. They will cooperate with the Jixia Martial Arts Academy and promote martial arts in the whole of Eastern Qi. Regardless of whether they are from a sect or an itinerant cultivator from the imperial court, they can all come to cultivate and listen to the lectures. After that, whether these people decide to join the Eastern Qi imperial court or leave, it's all up to them. When the Daluotian came to the lower realm, the Dao Master said that they had brought about a golden age of martial arts. Although this was somewhat false, the golden age of martial arts might be true. Whether it was because they wanted to compete for providence or disciples, the Star River Martial Arts Academy, the Three Pure Temple, and Chu Xiu had all put aside their sectarian bias and were willing to impart all their core martial arts. In the past, everyone had been cultivating with their eyes closed. Even the simplest Qi cultivation technique was hidden. But now, from body refinement to martial immortal, the door to the path of martial arts had been opened to the entire world. In a few decades or even 100 years, a flourishing age of martial arts might really be created. At this moment, LV Longguang suddenly dismissed everyone and said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, you have helped me, Eastern Qi, so much this time. I, Eastern Qi, have no way to repay you. I have something here for you, Cult Master Chu. It might be of some help to you." Chapter 1394. LV Longguang was not a stupid person. On the contrary, he was a very smart person. A stupid person would not be able to endure for so many years and endure until his father, the emperor, died. Then, in just a few days, he killed his brother, who was the crown prince, and ascended to the throne. From the matter of the Sanskrit sect, he could see that the pugilistic world was about to change. The world was no longer the same as before. Although Eastern Qi was the imperial court and controlled the life and death of countless people, it was still a weakling in this flourishing age of martial arts. Therefore, the most sensible thing to do now was to find a backer with great strength. There were many such people in the pugilistic world now, but the most suitable one for Eastern Qi was Chu Xiu. In fact, the true martial sect was also good enough. After all, they had Ning Xuanji behind them. Although Ning Xuanji would not really make a move, the deterrence would not be small. However, the sect master, Lu Changlu, was a good person. He was too soft-hearted. He would not harm people, but he did not have much ability to help people either. For example, this time, Lu Changlu did not have the slightest idea. He still had to rely on Chu Xiu to solve the problem. Therefore, LV Longguang had made up his mind to completely rely on the Kunlun devil cult. Since he had made up his mind, he should not be half-hearted. It was best to take out what he should take in exchange for peace. At this moment, Chu Xiu's idea was also very strange. He suddenly felt the effect of luck. Ning Xuanji said that luck was the icing on the cake. In fact, it was really a very wonderful thing. As long as you took the initiative to fight for luck, it would naturally come to you. For example, this time, Chu Xiu could choose to take action or not. If he chose to watch the show and cultivate diligently, he could just move the Mo clan of Shangyang to northern Yen or southern barbarian land. The Sanskrit sect would not be so bored as to target a small clan. However, he had spent a lot of time and effort intervening in this matter and successfully made the Kunlun devil cult the national religion of Eastern Qi. He had won the favor of the entire Eastern Qi martial arts community. Moreover, he had joined forces with the Jixia Martial Arts Academy to spread martial arts. The influence of the Kunlun devil cult in Eastern Qi skyrocketed, and it could be said that they had plundered a lot of luck from Eastern Qi. Therefore, after everything was done, LV Longguang took the initiative to come forward and offer benefits. This was not a coincidence, it was inevitable. If it wasn't Chu Xiu who made a move this time, but someone else, they would probably also receive the same treatment. Chu Xiu was stunned for a moment. He put away these messy thoughts and said, "Since that's the case, I won't stand on ceremony. May I know what your majesty is talking about?" "Cult Master Chu, please come with me." As he spoke, LV Longguang led Chu Xiu into the deepest part of the Eastern Qi Palace alone. He opened a secret passage in the formation and walked down. LV Longguang said as he walked, "Actually, this thing can be said to belong to Eastern Qi, but it should have belonged to Jiang. You should know this cult master Chu very well, right?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Your Majesty, you don't have to worry about this. Victory or defeat, success or failure, the winner takes precedence." The Jiang clan of Eastern Qi naturally didn't have the ability to control such a large country. It's only right that it was replaced by the Lu clan. The whole world actually knew about the trivial matters of Eastern Qi, so it wasn't a big deal. However, the people of the Lu royal family of Eastern Qi still couldn't let it go. They were afraid that others would slander them. LV Longguang smiled awkwardly and said, "Most of the things that I, Eastern Qi, have inherited were left behind by the Jiang royal family. In fact, they left quite a lot of good things, but the Jiang royal family was useless, so they couldn't make use of them. One of them should be useful for Cult Master Chu's cultivation. That thing is the dragon vein of Eastern Qi." Chu Xiu was stunned when he heard that. Dragon vein? Are you sure it's the dragon vein? How can the power of the dragon vein be refined? LV Longguang said, "Normal dragon veins can't be refined because they can't be divided. They can only be refined completely. However, I've also heard from some experts that those who can completely refine the dragon vein are basically not humans, but gods. However, the dragon vein of Eastern Qi is different. It seems that a few thousand years ago, when the world was still fighting for supremacy, the dragon vein of Eastern Qi was damaged. It couldn't be repaired, so some of its power leaked out. At that time, the ancestors of the Jiang clan relied on the power that leaked out to create many experts, and finally unified the Central Plains. However, I don't know if it has anything to do with the broken dragon vein. All these years, no matter if it's the Jiang clan or the Lu royal family, we've always been very powerful, but we've never unified the world." LV Longguang brought Chu Xiu out of the secret passage and directly came to a secret room. This was the place where Eastern Qi hid his treasures. There were countless treasures that Eastern Qi had collected, and even all kinds of secrets that couldn't be revealed to the public. LV Longguang brought Chu Xiu here because he really treated Chu Xiu as his only support, so he didn't plan to hide anything. However, although there were a lot of things, to Chu Xiu, there really wasn't anything too valuable. In Chu Xiu's eyes, the treasures that Eastern Qi treated as treasures were too arrogant to say that they were trash. He could only say that they were trash with some use. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly saw a white jade statue in the corner. The statue seemed to be a person walking on the waves. It was barefooted and its face was a little blurry, but the bright red dot between its eyebrows was extremely conspicuous. Chu Xiu could tell at a glance that this was Zhong Shenxiu. LV Longguang saw that Chu Xiu was staring at the statue and explained, "This is a statue left behind by the ancestors of the Jiang clan. The ancestors of the Jiang clan once said that they were enlightened by immortals and were favored by destiny. Therefore, they were destined to become the emperor and unify the world. However, in that chaotic world, everyone would say such words. It's just boasting and it's so exaggerated." This statue was also carefully examined by the ancestors and proved to be an ordinary statue without any special abilities. Could it be that there's something wrong with it? Chu Xiu smiled and shook his head. There was a puzzled look in his eyes as he said, "Boasting? Maybe what he said is true." Chu Xiu was already sure that Zhong Shenxiu was really a person with immortality. Of course, to be more precise, even if he was not immortal, he had lived for 10,000 years. In the history of Jianghu, he was very low-key and had no emotions. Except for his so-called karma, he would never take the initiative to make a move. But even so, with his strength, he had left many marks and legends in this Jianghu. Who knew when he would discover one? At this time, LV Longguang was also standing in front of a door. He began to turn the mechanism on the iron door and activate the array. Chu Xiu touched his nose. In fact, the power of this array was not strong. Chu Xiu could break it with one hand. However, this was someone else's treasure house after all. It was better for him to keep a low profile. LV Longguang spent a long time activating the array. He smiled awkwardly and said, "I have never opened this place since I knew about it. I only checked it in the secret books left by the late emperor, so I'm a little unfamiliar with it." After a while, as the array was activated, the door began to rise. In an instant, a powerful wave of yuan qi swept over. Its power was so overwhelming that LV Longguang's face immediately turned pale. He forced a smile and said, "Cult Master Chu, you can go in yourself. Even if it's refining the overflowing power of the dragon vein, the requirement for a martial artist is also very high. You must be in the heaven and earth profound understanding realm, and you must also be in the prime of your life to have the qualifications to refine it. So, my Lu royal family has not opened this place for hundreds of years. I can't withstand this kind of power wave. I'll wait for you outside." However, right at this moment, Chu Xiu looked towards the dragon vein and was suddenly stunned. The reason for that was because the things within were a little beyond his imagination. Inside the iron door was a completely materialized space. The golden yuan qi was like liquid, filling the entire space. However, it was a whole and would not seep apart. And in the golden yuan qi, there was a golden streamlined object swimming in it. It was the dragon vein. It did not have the shape of a dragon, but it had the will of a dragon. As it moved, it was like the backbone of the world. The rhythm and pulse also coincided with the mysteries of heaven. But these were not the most important. Chu Xiu was experienced and knowledgeable, so how could he be stunned by a dragon vein? Because there was another person in the space other than the dragon vein. The person wore a gorgeous golden armor that covered his entire body, including his head. He carried a pile of weapons on his back, such as the dragon courage spear, halberd, phoenix wing gold-plated drum, green dragon crescent blade, and so on. They were stuck on his back like a peacock spreading its tail. At that moment, he held a gloomy white bone sword that was nailed to the tail of the dragon vein. A space door opened in front of him, absorbing the power that overflowed from the tail of the dragon vein. The person's appearance was very exaggerated, so Chu Xiu found him very familiar. He seemed to have seen him somewhere before. After a while, Chu Xiu remembered that this person's appearance was the one he saw in the illusion of the hidden devil clan. Wasn't he the castle master of the Iron Emperor Castle from 500 years ago who was killed by Dugu Weiwei's ethereal slash? Why would a person who had died 500 years ago appear here? Chu Xiu suddenly pulled LV Longguang over, pointed at it and said, "What is this?" LV Longguang was dumbfounded. "I don't know either. The ancient books left by the late emperor didn't mention that there was someone in the dragon vein. What's going on?" Chu Xiu took a deep breath and stepped into the space. Although he did not know what was going on, he was sure that there was definitely a conspiracy. As Chu Xiu stepped into the space of the dragon vein, he stirred the yuan qi. Before he could speak, the person who looked like the castle master of the Iron Emperor Castle had already discovered him. The castle master of the Iron Emperor Castle turned his head to Chu Xiu. From his helmet, there were actually 2 spots of evil red light that were filled with endless bloody killing intent. Before Chu Xiu could say anything, the castle master of the Iron Emperor Castle had already pulled out the green dragon crescent blade from his back and suddenly slashed down. The power of the blade was unparalleled, shattering mountains and rivers. Chu Xiu was extremely familiar with that blade intent. It came from the same source as his blade technique. That was the landslide of the 7 limits. Chapter 1395. The moment the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle attacked, Chu Xiu knew that he was a completely different person from the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle in his memory. When he first saw that illusion, the Kunlun Devil cult had yet to unify the martial world. It should be in the early stages, so Dugu Weiwei might not have reached the level where he could beat the entire Daluotian. However, the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle was definitely not a martial immortal. He should only be at the peak of heaven and earth elemental enlightenment. However, looking at the power of his slash, he should have the strength of a level 3 or level 4 martial immortal. Facing the mountain crumble of the 7 limits, Chu Xiu also slashed. One slash devouring the heavens. The powerful force of the blade instantly enveloped the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle. The huge black hole even devoured the energy in the dragon vein space. Although devouring the heavens could not completely devour the energy due to the dragon vein, it created a huge vortex of energy in the surroundings. When the two blades collided, the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle was sent flying. The green dragon crescent blade in his hand was completely shattered. When it came to blade techniques, his mountain crumble was not as good as Chu Xiu's devouring the heavens. When it came to weapons, the green dragon crescent blade in his hand was not as good as the formation breaking technique. When it came to strength, Chu Xiu could already face Yan Imo, who was at the peak of level 8, let alone someone who was only at level 3 or level 4. When the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle met Chu Xiu, he could only be beaten up. Therefore, after this slash, Chu Xiu did not attack again. He only asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Are you the Lord of Iron Emperor Castle from 500 years ago?" The Lord of Iron Emperor Castle did not speak. The blood-red killing intent in his eyes intensified. He drew out the dragon courage spear on his back and stabbed forward, stirring up the power of mountains and rivers. "Stubborn fool!" Chu Xiu snorted coldly. When the misty slash landed, the formless blade intent directly tore the spear apart. However, the Lord of the Iron Emperor Castle was very persistent. In the blink of an eye, he took out a phoenix feather gold-plated drum and swept it towards Chu Xiu with boundless sharpness. Chu Xiu frowned slightly. Why does this guy seem to have no brains? Forming hand seals, 6 Saha Splendor wheels appeared and directly trapped the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master. At the same time, the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet in Chu Xiu's hand trembled. He wanted to pull his Yuan Shen into the illusion of the 6 paths of reincarnation to see what exactly the other party was. However, Chu Xiu was surprised to find that the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet had no reaction at all. The 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet's attacks on the soul were abnormally direct. If your soul wasn't strong enough, or if your power wasn't steady enough, you would be pulled into the 6 paths of reincarnation. However, if the opponent was strong and had a steady soul, the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet would also cause a certain amount of pulling force to interfere with the opponent's battle. In short, there would be some feedback. However, Chu Xiu couldn't feel any feedback from the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master. It was as if the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master was made of stone. This scene was very unreasonable. The person before him was so strong, comparable to a 3rd or 4th heaven martial immortal. How could he not have a Yuanshin? Within the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, 6 different powers kept bombarding the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master. However, the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master did not have any intention of surrendering. He continued to attack madly. Chu Xiu snorted coldly. With the holy demon indestructible body on his body, he took a step forward and arrived in front of the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master. He punched out. Golden Buddhist light mixed with pitch-black demonic aura blasted the Iron Emperor Fort Master away. However, at the same time, Chu Xiu pulled his hands horizontally. The powerful force immediately shattered the Iron Emperor Fort Master's golden armor, revealing a horrifying body. The Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master was extremely pale. There were dense cracks on his body as if he had been dismembered and then stitched back together. The joints were connected by bone spurs. The Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master looked like a middle-aged man with a big beard. However, he was expressionless. Only his eyes were filled with blood-red murderous intent. He pounced at Chu Xiu again and again. Chu Xiu used the law phenomenon and pressed the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master to the edge of the space. He said coldly, "Speak, who are you?" However, after struggling, the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master's lifeless face twitched slightly. The red murderous intent in his eyes dimmed. He forced a strange and twisted smile on his zombie-like face. He said in a voice that sounded like sand and stones grinding against each other, "He's coming back. All of you are going to die. All of you will die." As soon as he finished speaking, the body of the Iron Emperor Castle's Fort Master instantly disintegrated into ashes that floated in the air. Chu Xiu was stunned. He didn't even feel any energy wave before the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master suddenly turned into ashes. This gave Chu Xiu the feeling that he was fighting an illusion. The bone sword that was nailed to the dragon vene's tail also turned into ashes. At the same time, the space door disappeared. Chu Xiu frowned as he walked out of the Yuanqi space. LV Longguang was scared out of his wits. He even had some lingering fear. This was the secret place of the Eastern Qi royal family where countless trump cards of the Eastern Qi royal family were kept. Now, someone suddenly appeared here with such powerful strength. Just thinking about it terrified him. At the same time, LV Longguang was glad that he decided to cling to Chu Xiu. That was why he revealed this place to Chu Xiu and discovered this person in advance. Otherwise, if the other Eastern Qi royal family members entered, they would definitely not be able to defeat that strange person. That strange person was able to exchange so many blows with Chu Xiu. He must be a martial immortal. Cult Master Chu, that person just now. What is he? LV Longguang asked carefully. Chu Xiu frowned and said, if I'm not mistaken, he should be the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master who was destroyed by the Kunlun Devil cult 500 years ago. LV Longguang was stunned. 500 years ago? A dead person? Cult Master Chu, are you joking? Chu Xiu looked at him expressionlessly. Do I look like I'm joking? Oh, you said that there is no record of this person in the books of your Eastern Qi royal family? LV Longguang shook his head. No, absolutely not. What about the books of the Jiang dynasty royal family? There is none. The books of our Eastern Qi royal family were written based on the books of the Jiang dynasty royal family. We just changed the name. How many years ago was the last time someone from your Eastern Qi royal family entered it? LV Longguang thought for a while and said, it should be more than 100 years. There was definitely no such person back then. Chu Xiu rubbed his head and felt a slight headache. A person who had died 500 years ago reappeared here. If it was someone else, Chu Xiu might not have suspected anything. But he was the Iron Emperor Fort's Fort Master, and he even said that he had returned. It was easy for Chu Xiu to associate it with Dugu Weiwei and Dugu Weiwei in the Yellow Springs Heaven. At that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He said to LV Longguang, seal this place for now. No one is allowed to enter. LV Longguang wanted to ask something, but Chu Xiu took a step forward and disappeared in front of him almost instantly. Using the power of rules, Chu Xiu rode the wind and walked in the air. He didn't stop for rest. In less than 5 days, he had returned from Great Liang City in Eastern Qi to Yanjing City. After arriving at Yanjing City, Chu Xiu went straight to the Imperial Palace to look for Xiangli. The entire northern Yan Imperial Palace was almost unimpeded by Chu Xiu. This was also under Xiangli's instructions. Recently, Xiangli had been very relaxed. Chu Xiu had changed the rules of the northern Yan. Even the Daluotian martial artists didn't dare to cause trouble. Therefore, he didn't have to live in fear every day. Coincidentally, he had nothing better to do. Since he had nothing to do, he flipped through the signs in the palace, thinking about which concubine he should pamper. He wasn't envious of his father who had founded the Northern Yan Empire. At his peak, he was even on par with Eastern Qi. Instead, he was envious of the Eastern Qi's Lu Haochang. His father had been scheming and scheming his entire life. He had long gone to the underworld. On the other hand, Lu Haochang had lived a life of pleasure and slept with women all his life. He had lived to almost 100 years old. A fatuous ruler was a fatuous ruler. As an emperor, happiness was the most important thing. However, before he could make his choice, Chu Xiu had already appeared in the Great Hall. He stirred up a breeze, and Xiangli was instantly scared out of his wits. Cult Master Chu, why are you, without waiting for him to finish, Chu Xiu said, bring me to the dragon vein of Northern Yan to have a look. Xiangli was shocked. The dragon vein was related to the future of the entire Northern Yan. It was of utmost importance. Xiangli quickly asked, Cult Master Chu, why do you want to go to the dragon vein? Chu Xiu frowned. But you don't allow it? Xiangli quickly said, of course. I'll bring you there right now. Xiang Li knew that the entire Northern Yen was given to him by Chu Xiu. Without Chu Xiu, the Northern Yen would still be the Northern Yen, but the authority of the Northern Yen imperial court would be non-existent. Chu Xiu and the Kunlun devil cult behind him were what allowed Xiang Li to be a fatuous ruler. So, as long as Chu Xiu didn't want to replace the Xiang clan, everything was fine. Xiang Li brought Chu Xiu to the back of the mountain, passed through the imperial mausoleum, and walked to the deepest part. He pointed to the underground palace and said, "Cult Master Chu, below this palace is the Dragon Vein." The Northern Yan's Dragon Vein was not like the one in Eastern Qi that could directly absorb energy, so they didn't open a cave here. They only left an underground palace for the imperial family to cultivate or forge weapons with the energy of the Dragon Vein. Is there anything in the Northern Yan's Dragon Vein? Xiang Li quickly shook his head. The Dragon Vein is very important. Who would dare put anything in it? It will affect the feng shui. Chu Xiu nodded and smashed the underground palace with a punch. Under Xiang Li's dumbfounded gaze, he stepped into the Dragon Vein. The Northern Yan's Dragon Vein was very similar to Eastern Qi's, but it was smaller than Eastern Qi's. But now, the scene was exactly the same as Eastern Qi's. A warrior in silver armor stood beside the Dragon Vein, his bone sword nailed to the tail of the Dragon Vein, channeling the energy into a spatial door. Chapter 1396. The moment he saw the Northern Yen Dragon Vein, Chu Xiu was certain that someone was indeed extracting the power of the Dragon Vein from the three countries. Who are you? Are you also a martialist from 500 years ago? Did Dugu Weiwei bring you out? Chu Xiu could not think of any other way for a martialist from 500 years ago to be resurrected, apart from the Yellow Springs Heaven, which was said to be filled with vengeful spirits. However, this time, the martialist in silver armor was like the Lord of the Iron Emperor Castle. It was as if there was no way to communicate with him, and he immediately attacked. A silver-white spear appeared in his hand. As it smashed down, everything in its path was completely frozen. Even the power of laws was frozen. This martialist was even weaker than the Lord of the Iron Emperor Castle. He only had the strength of a second heaven martial immortal. This time, Chu Xiu did not waste any words. He immediately used the law embodiment of heaven and earth and smashed the spear in his hand with a punch. However, the martialist's eyes shone with a cold light. It went straight for Chu Xiu's eyes, and even his primordial spirit felt threatened. Chu Xiu raised his brows. He knew the other party's identity. The icy soul divine eyes. This person should be the lord of the northern snowflake city from 500 years ago. With a wave of the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, a golden light completely destroyed the icy soul divine light. Seeing that Chu Xiu's law embodiment of heaven and earth was about to grab him, the lord of the northern snowflake city from 500 years ago revealed a strange smile. Without saying a word, his body turned into ashes and scattered between heaven and earth. Chu Xiu was taken aback. He hurriedly turned his gaze in the direction of the bone sword. However, the bone sword disappeared at the same time as the lord of the northern snowflake city. The gate that was absorbing the power of the Dragon Vein also disappeared. Chu Xiu's expression was a little gloomy. Too slow, too slow. These resurrected martialists from 500 years ago were not completely unconscious. At the very least, they could choose when they were going to die. But it didn't matter, there was still another place, and that was West Chu. Stepping out of the Dragon Vein, Xiang Li, who was outside, was already scared out of his wits. In fact, he was even more scared than LV Longguang. After all, ever since the establishment of the Northern Yen Nation, no one had ever dared to open up the Dragon Vein. How did this person manage to enter it? Xiang Li had too many questions, but before he could speak, Chu Xiu said, "Send people to seal off this place. No one is allowed to come in for the time being." After that, Chu Xiu left without giving Xiang Li a chance to ask any more questions. In the West Chu Imperial Palace, Meng Yunqing was discussing with the old celestial master about the many Daluotian martial artists that had descended to the lower realm. Among the 3 countries in the lower domain, Eastern Qi had the 2 top sects in the Western region and the Galaxy Martial Arts Academy. Now that the Kunlun Devil cult had intervened, it could be said that the situation seemed chaotic, but it was actually stable. The Northern Yen relied on Chu Xiu to make an example out of the Northern Yen. With a strong attitude, he formulated the rules of the Northern Yen nation, so the Northern Yen nation was also very stable. There was only West Chu. Many Daluotian rogue cultivators and sects had settled here, which had caused a lot of trouble. Meng Yunqing frowned and said, "Old Celestial Master, I heard that you have already dealt with the 3 Pure Temple's Taoist leaders. What does the 3 Pure Temple want?" The Celestial Master Mansion was the state religion of West Chu, and of course, the moon-worshipping cult was the same. Therefore, Meng Yunqing trusted the old Celestial Master very much, just like how Xiang Li trusted Chu Xiu. The old Celestial Master smiled bitterly and said, "What else can it mean? It means that I don't care about anything and it depends on my mood. This old man's cultivation is at the top in the lower realm, but it's nothing in the 3 Pure Temple. There are some young people there who are stronger than me. Therefore, Your Highness, don't count on the 3 Pure Temple. The 3 Pure Temple only cares about their own interests when they settle in West Chu. They won't care about the interests of others, and they can't care about them." Meng Yunqing sighed and said, "Old Celestial Master, you can't do anything about it. I am a person from the lower realm. Are we going to be slaughtered by the Daluotian? They even said that we come from the same source, but they still don't put us in their eyes." The old Celestial Master shook his head. "No matter when, it's about strength, not friendship. Moreover, the lower realm is not so bad. Senior Ning Xuanji alone can make the Daluotians so afraid. Moreover, the lower realm may not be strong, but it does produce top talents. Needless to say, Chu Xiu is the most troublemaker. I heard that he almost overturned half of the Daluotian. Not long ago, he intervened in the dispute of Eastern Qi and forced the Sanskrit sect to retreat. I have to say, that kid is indeed a talent in handling matters. And Yi Xiaonan, that person is not simple either. I have fought with him before, and I knew at that time that he would definitely go further than me. Previously, it was this world that was dragging him down. Now that this burden is gone, Yi Xiaonan will definitely soar into the sky. The demonic path is on the rise, and it can't be stopped." Meng Yunqing wanted to say something, but he sighed and shook his head. These 2 couldn't be borrowed from anyone. Chu Xiu had nothing to do with his West Chu. Even if he did, the West Chu royal family wouldn't dare to bring in foreign forces. As for Yi Xiaonan, he was simply a closed-door cultivation maniac. He would cultivate whenever he had time, and even the people in the moon-worshipping sect didn't see him more than a few times. At this moment, someone suddenly came to report that Chu Xiu had come to visit, which stunned Meng Yunqing. They were just talking about Chu Xiu, and they didn't expect him to appear already. "Quick, invite him in." With Chu Xiu's current status in the underworld, he deserved Meng Yunqing to treat him with this kind of caution. Chu Xiu entered the main hall and couldn't help but be surprised to see the old Celestial Master here. However, regarding the people in the Dragon Vein, Chu Xiu was in a hurry to understand the relationship between them, so he didn't have time to waste. Chu Xiu's eyes turned, and he instantly had an idea. Meng Yunqing cupped his hands and said, "May I know why Cult Master Chu has come to my West Chu?" Chu Xiu greeted the old Celestial Master, then said to Meng Yunqing, "I'm here to make a deal with your Majesty." "A deal? What kind of deal?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I've received news that the Dragon Vein of West Chu has been invaded by the extraterrestrial fiends, and they're currently destroying the Dragon Vein. I can help your Majesty eradicate the extraterrestrial fiends, but your Majesty must promise me one thing, and that is to let the people of the Kunlun Devil cult cultivate in the Dragon Vein for a period of time." Meng Yunqing was shocked when he heard this. "Impossible. The Dragon Vein of West Chu is protected by the Meng royal bloodline, and it's filled with formations. It's impossible for anyone to barge in." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Since it's the extraterrestrial fiends, their methods are definitely not something ordinary warriors can imagine. Formations and people won't be able to stop them. Since your Majesty doesn't believe me, then forget it. I'll take my leave now. Seeing that Chu Xiu was about to leave, Meng Yunqing hurriedly said, "Wait, Cult Master Chu." The dragon vein was related to the foundation of the country. Even if Chu Xiu's words were very mysterious, Meng Yunqing didn't dare to ignore him. Meng Yunqing looked at the old celestial master, who also nodded lightly. Although the old celestial master didn't know what Chu Xiu wanted to do, he knew that Chu Xiu wasn't the kind of person who would purposely come to West Chu to deceive Meng Yunqing. Meng Yunqing smiled awkwardly. "Cult Master Chu, please forgive me. I'm not doubting you, I'm just surprised." "Cult Master Chu, don't worry, I agree to this deal. I'll bring Cult Master Chu to the Dragon Vein now." Meng Yunqing brought Chu Xiu into the West Chu royal family's secret area, and the old celestial master followed behind them. This made Chu Xiu frown slightly, but he didn't say anything. When they arrived at the Dragon Vein's secret area, the West Chu people didn't open the door to the Dragon Vein. They only set up a formation to guard the place. Chu Xiu punched a hole in the Dragon Vein, exposing the inside of the Dragon Vein to them. The West Chu Dragon Vein was even smaller than the Northern Yen Dragon Vein. The person standing there to intercept the Dragon Vein was an old man in a yin-yang Taoist robe, but he didn't look like a sage at all. The muscles on his face were grayish-white, connected by bone spikes. He looked like the extraterrestrial demon that Chu Xiu mentioned. In any case, he didn't look like a good person. Meng Yunqing pointed at the old man in Taoist robe and said with a trembling voice, He is." Chu Xiu didn't have time to answer Meng Yunqing's question. He immediately used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth and pounced at the old man in Taoist robe. At this time, the old celestial master stood at the back with a frown. Why did he feel that the old man in Taoist robe looked familiar? Chu Xiu had tried to capture these people alive twice before, but he failed both times. He also failed to investigate the situation inside the door. The West Chu Dragon Vein was his last chance. If he failed this time, he wouldn't know the truth at all. The essence qi in the Dragon Vein was stirred. The old man in Taoist robe looked at Chu Xiu. His scarlet eyes were filled with a hint of lightning. The next moment he made a hand seal and countless thunderballs gathered in the air. Purple Heaven Thunderbolt, Ninth Heaven Heavenly Thunder, Divine Devil Slayer Thunder. All kinds of thunder came crashing down, forming a huge thunder formation. Chu Xiu, who was in the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth state, was completely imprisoned in it. They kept bombarding him, making it difficult for him to move. The old man in Taoist robe was even stronger than the city lord of the drifting snow city and the lord of the Iron Emperor fort. He had the combat power of a fifth heaven martial immortal. At this time, the old celestial master's eyes widened in disbelief. Dragon Tiger Supreme 9 Immortal Scripture. Patriarch. You are the Patriarch? The old celestial master found the Taoist elder familiar, but he didn't recognize him. The flesh on the old man's face seemed to have been sewn back on after being dismembered. Some parts were distorted, and only a rough outline could be seen. But when the old man in Taoist robe attacked, the old celestial master finally recognized him. He was the previous celestial master of the Celestial Master Mansion 500 years ago. The old celestial master quickly shouted at Chu Xiu, "Cult Master Chu! Stop for now. He is the previous celestial master of the Celestial Master Mansion. There must be some misunderstanding." Chu Xiu sneered, "The previous celestial master? Maybe he was, but now he is an extraterritorial demon. I stopped, but he won't stop. Why don't you call him and see if he agrees?" Chapter 1397. The old heavenly master was a little excited to see his patriarch from 500 years ago. However, when he calmed down, he realized that something was amiss. How could someone who had been dead for 500 years come back to life? Furthermore, the previous heavenly master's current appearance was clearly abnormal. "Patriarch! Patriarch!" The old heavenly master shouted, but the previous heavenly master did not react at all. The thunder formation in his hands smashed toward Chu Xiu even more ferociously. Chu Xiu let out a cold roar and unleashed the invincible sacred demon body to its limit. He threw a punch and completely broke through the seal of the thunder formation. However, in the next moment, the previous heavenly master continued forming the thunder seal. A huge lightning tiger and a lightning dragon took shape in the air. The dragon and tiger converged, charging at Chu Xiu like a giant beast, entangling with him. When the old heavenly master saw that the previous heavenly master did not react, he could not help but ask Chu Xiu, "Cult Master Chu, what's going on?" "How would I know what's going on? Old heavenly master, if you don't come and help me capture him, it'll be too late." Although the previous heavenly master's cultivation was on par with the fifth heaven, it was still very easy for Chu Xiu to take care of him. However, Chu Xiu did not dare to kill him. Instead, he was controlling his strength and looking for an opportunity to capture his opponent alive. Chu Xiu had roughly figured out the pattern from the previous 2 times. As long as he could completely suppress his opponent with his strength, causing his opponent to think that he could not defend himself, his opponent would automatically turn into ashes. Therefore, Chu Xiu could not unleash his strongest strength yet. He had to find an opportunity to defeat his opponent with a single strike and completely seal his opponent's strength. Although the old heavenly master had no idea what was going on, he had no choice but to make a move. Although the old celestial master was only a rank 3 martial immortal, he was very familiar with the techniques of the celestial master mansion. Seeing that Chu Xiu was fighting the lightning dragon and tiger, the old heavenly master said in a low voice, "Dragon and tiger converge, wind and cloud gather, dragon and tiger are yin and yang. Wind and cloud gather and disperse to form lightning." Cult Master Chu, the core of this move is the power of yin and yang. Attack the source and cause yin and yang to become chaotic, and you can easily break through it. Chu Xiu nodded. The creation demonic chi transformed into a long saber and slashed out, instantly splitting the dragon and tiger apart. At the same time, the demonic chi saber twisted and turned into a huge creation heavenly demon phantom, enveloping the thunder dragon completely. Boundless creation demonic chi seeped into the thunder dragon. In an instant, the balance of yin and yang had been disrupted. Chu Xiu's fist fell, and the dragon and tiger were completely smashed. A sword appeared in the hands of the previous heavenly master. It was a long sword formed entirely of greenish-purple lightning. As the long sword pointed to the sky, the moving lightning condensed into the power of laws, intertwining in midair to form a scroll written entirely with lightning. Lightning Heavenly Tome. The old heavenly master's expression changed instantly. This was the ultimate skill of the previous heavenly master. However, at that time, the previous heavenly master could only weave the lightning heavenly tome with his earth energy and then use the power of heaven and earth. But now, the previous heavenly master could actually weave the lightning heavenly tome with the power of laws. The old heavenly master gritted his teeth and formed a seal with his hands. Boundless lightning energy poured out of his seemingly thin body, turning into the image of the 9 heavens' responsive thunder heavenly lord. It supported the sky and earth, blocking the lightning heavenly tome. In the next moment, boundless lightning fell, its color already glaring white, illuminating the entire space of the dragon vein as if it was daytime. While the old celestial master was blocking the attack, Chu Xiu unleashed his 6 samsara wheel of splendor. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the power of the 6 paths to kill the previous heavenly master. Instead, he used the power of the human realm with all his might. A misty aura completely enveloped the previous heavenly master, assimilating and destroying his power, not allowing him to use any power. Chu Xiu grabbed the previous heavenly master and formed another seal with his hands. The power of the heavenly demon of creation formed an extremely huge demonic domain around them, prohibiting any kind of foreign power. The old heavenly master also came over and shouted, "Ancestral Master! Ancestral Master! Do you still recognize me?" When the previous heavenly master passed away, the heavenly master residence actually had a period of time. At that time, the heavenly master residence was also full of talents, and the old heavenly master was only a young Taoist priest, not famous. However, the previous heavenly master definitely recognized him, and even gave him pointers on martial arts. At that moment, the previous heavenly master's body struggled. Lightning flashed, but the lightning did not spread outwards, instead entering his body. The red glow in the previous heavenly master's eyes faded, revealing a pair of slightly turbid eyes. However, it was only at this moment that a hint of humanity appeared in his eyes. The previous heavenly master looked at the old heavenly master, and the corners of his mouth twitched, revealing a strange smile. He said in a hoarse voice, "Yenyuan, you did well." Zhang Yenyuan was the old heavenly master's secular name, and it had been a long time since anyone called him that. Hearing that, the old heavenly master's eyes lit up. He suppressed the excitement in his heart, wanting to ask what exactly was going on. However, at that moment, the previous heavenly master immediately turned to look at Chu Xiu, and said in a low voice, "Isn't he?" As soon as he said those 3 words, the previous heavenly master's eyes suddenly shone with a red glow. Chu Xiu secretly cursed. As expected, without any warning, Chu Xiu did not even notice any leakage of power, and the previous heavenly master's body directly turned into ashes. This time, Chu Xiu's actions were extremely fast. The moment the red light lit up, his figure had already shifted to the side of the bone sword. At that moment, the bone sword also began to turn into ashes, and the door was dissipating. At that critical moment, Chu Xiu had no time to think. He immediately separated a wisp of his primordial spirit and sent it into the door. What appeared in Chu Xiu's perception was a sea of blood, a boundless sea of blood. This scene was both familiar and unfamiliar to Chu Xiu, because he had seen it before. This was the scene in Netherworld Heaven. This matter was similar to what Chu Xiu had guessed. The erosion of the dragon veins of the 3 kingdoms was indeed the handiwork of Dugu Weiwei. However, what was even more shocking was that no one knew how long Dugu Weiwei had been doing this. If not for this coincidence, Chu Xiu had intervened in the matter of Eastern Qi, and LV Longguang had been prepared to ride on Chu Xiu's coattails, he might not even have discovered this matter. On the other side, the door had already been cut off, and the wisp of power of Chu Xiu's primordial spirit began to rapidly deplete. Relying on the weak power of his primordial spirit, Chu Xiu desperately tried to see what Netherworld Heaven looked like, but all he saw was a sea of blood in the Netherworld. Countless white bones floated in it, and he could vaguely see countless vengeful spirits struggling below, trying to break free. At this moment, the sea of blood churned, and Chu Xiu could vaguely see that the sea of blood in the distance had begun to boil violently. A white bone throne slowly rose from the sea of blood, and there seemed to be a figure sitting on it. However, this was already the last scene Chu Xiu saw. In the next moment, the power of Chu Xiu's primordial spirit was completely depleted. On the other side, Chu Xiu let out a muffled grunt, and his face turned pale. As the door was cut off, that wisp of his primordial spirit had completely dissipated, and he could not retrieve it. This kind of damage to the primordial spirit was permanent, and it would take a lot of energy to recover. However, after seeing the scene on the other side of the door, he confirmed his guess, and it was not a loss. At this moment, the old celestial master turned his head and said with a serious expression, "Cult Master Chu, what was that just now? Why did the previous celestial master of my celestial master abode resurrect? Don't use the excuse of extraterrestrial demons to fool me." Chu Xiu took a deep breath and said, "Old celestial master, would you believe me if I told you that I don't know?" The old celestial master stared at Chu Xiu, and in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. "I believe you." He had no choice but to believe him. He was no match for Chu Xiu, and if Chu Xiu did not want to tell him, was he supposed to force it out of him? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "Actually, I really don't know." He could not tell him about Dugu Weiwei or Yellow Springs Heaven. Chu Xiu did not know how those beings from 500 years ago were resurrected, so he could only say that he did not know. However, Chu Xiu pondered for a moment, then asked the old celestial master, "Old celestial master, do you know where people go after they die?" The old celestial master instinctively said, "Where else can they go after they die?" However, after saying that, the old celestial master was stunned. If they had really died, then how could the scene from earlier be explained? An existence from 500 years ago was resurrected. Could this also be considered as death? Chu Xiu shook his head. The world is too big. You and I think we can understand it, but there are too many things we don't understand. We can't even understand the word, life, and death. Reincarnation, rebirth, are these things just legends or do they really exist? Can anyone really figure it out? The old celestial master rubbed his head. Of course, he did not know. What had happened today had destroyed his worldview. He was old and had yet to digest it all. Chu Xiu turned to Meng Yunqing. Your Majesty, I've already cleaned up the Western Chu Dragon Vein for you. Don't forget our previous deal. I'll be coming to the Western Chu Dragon Vein in a while to bring some people to cultivate. The 3 dragon veins of Eastern Qi, Western Chu, and Northern Yen were all damaged at this time, and a part of their power had been absorbed. However, it did not matter. The dragon veins themselves were natural objects. Except for the dragon vein of Eastern Qi, the other 2 could slowly recover even if they were damaged. Chu Xiu could now directly absorb the power in the dragon vein to cultivate. Because there were 3 dragon veins, he could give the other 2 to others. At the very least, 1 dragon vein could accommodate 3 or 4 first to third heaven martial immortals, or about 10 heaven and earth profound enlightenment cultivators. However, Chu Xiu did not have time to cultivate now. He still had to go to the Daluocean to ask Heavenly Soul about the various phenomena that had appeared in the lower realm. Meng Yunqing naturally would not talk about these things, and since it involved the previous Celestial Master of the Celestial Master Mansion, the old Celestial Master naturally would not talk about it. After leaving the aftermath to them, Chu Xiu directly returned to the Daluocean through the southern barbaric land passage and went straight to the High Heaven sect to find Heavenly Soul. Chapter 1398. After the High Heaven sect completely submitted to the Kunlun devil cult, the disciples naturally recognized Chu Xiu, so Chu Xiu arrived at the spiritual cloud realm unimpeded. Standing in front of the spiritual cloud realm for a moment, Chu Xiu sighed, opened the spirit array, and stepped into the spiritual cloud realm. In the misty spiritual cloud realm, Tianhun noticed the arrival of Chu Xiu. He raised his head, which had been lowered, and revealed a slightly strange smile. "Oh, you've reached the 5th heaven so quickly. Are you here to let me out?" Chu Xiu stared at Tianhun, shook his head gently, and said, "If I said I was going to let you out, would you believe me?" Tianhun also shook his head and said, "Of course not. If you let me out so easily, you wouldn't be an earth soul. The cultivation of the 5th heaven is not enough to make you arrogant and let your guard down. Let me out just like that. Don't worry, there's no need to play these tricks between us. I know that you will never let me go until you have absolute confidence in controlling me. Why did you come this time? What problems did you find?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I found some problems about Netherworld Heaven. Some of the arrangements made by Dugu Weiwei in the lower realm are somewhat beyond my imagination." With that, Chu Xiu told Tianhun about the things he had found in the 3 dragon veins. Tianhun raised his eyebrows and said, "All the people who died 500 years ago have been resurrected? And they have obtained more powerful combat power than when they were alive?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes, everyone has become a martial immortal, but their strength is not the same. They should have improved according to their strength when they were alive. Do you know what's going on? But what does the life soul plan to do in the lower realm?" Tianhun shook his head and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Ever since the Daluocean battle, the heaven, earth, and life souls have been completely separated. So, after the life souls went to the Yellow Springs heaven, I definitely don't know what arrangements they made or what they discovered. That's why I said that when the real Dugu Weiwei appears in Netherworld Heaven, his strength will definitely be beyond your imagination. At my peak, I can only recover to the level of Dugu Weiwei from 500 years ago when I fought the Daluocean. As for you, You have to be stronger than him at that time to have a chance of fighting Duga Life Soul. As for descending to the mortal world, from the looks of it, you must have destroyed the gate of heaven, causing the Daluotian to descend to the mortal world, right? Chu Xiu nodded and said, that's right. The Daluotian sects have already established themselves in the lower realm. Tian Hun said in a low voice, don't underestimate the lower worlds. In fact, the lower worlds have more potential than the Daluotian. The Daluotian is an unexploited world, so it's rich in resources. But what about the lower worlds? Chu Xiu said doubtfully, the resources in the lower worlds shouldn't be as rich as the Daluotian. They've already been exploited for 10,000 years, and their vitality isn't abundant. There aren't even any decent ferocious beasts. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was established in the Daluotian, the old barbarian king had obtained a mountain dragon. It was a genuine dragon, but it was already extinct in the lower worlds. Tian Hun shook his head and said, wrong. The resources in the lower worlds aren't as rich as the Daluotian, but there are many treasures buried in the lower worlds. Do you think the lower worlds are just the lower worlds? The current lower worlds are a combination of the mortal world and the mortal world. In the past, the geniuses in the mortal world were the true golden age of martial arts. All kinds of amazing experts emerged one after another, and all kinds of top martial arts sects sprouted like bamboo shoots after the rain. The Daluotian that you see now is indeed strong, but it's only on the basis of the mortal world. They're just a group of ants struggling to escape. On the shoulders of the golden age of martial arts, they created the prosperity of the Daluotian. The truly good things are still buried in the lower worlds. Although the ancient calamity caused the mortal world to be destroyed, the remaining mortal world has already merged with the mortal world, and some of the things in it have been preserved. The most important reason for the Daluotian sects to descend to the lower worlds is to find the things that their ancestors didn't take away. Chu Xiu frowned and said, if you know about these things, then the Dugu Weiwei of the past definitely knows about them too. Why didn't he dig them out back then? Do you think that the Dugu Weiwei of the past still needed these things? Chu Xiu choked for a moment. Indeed, with the strength of the Dugu Weiwei, he didn't need these external things. They weren't even the icing on the cake. However, the Dugu Weiwei doesn't need these things, but you have the chance to use them now. Let me think, what place hasn't been dug out yet? All right, is the Central Plains under your control now? Chu Xiu nodded and said, you can say so. However, the Central Plains is a vast land with abundant resources. There are many sects and powers. The Kunlun demon sect only controls a portion of the power. However, my relationship with the imperial court that controls the Central Plains is not bad. Tian Hun said, then it's easy. In the deepest part of the Central Plains are the ruins of the primordial divine palace. That was a sect that existed tens of thousands of years ago. Yes, you can say that it's a sect of lunatics. Those people got tired of playing around with martial arts and wanted to create gods. Thus, they came into contact with some of the world's source energy and left some things there. I don't know the specifics, but if you can fuse with them, you will gain great benefits. Chu Xiu nodded. Suddenly he said, why didn't you say so earlier? If you had, I would have gone looking for that place long ago. Tian Hun rolled his eyes and said, you should have said so earlier. Are you strong enough? Those lunatics from the primordial divine palace are very wild. Although I don't know how they set up the ruins, it is possible for them to kill 1 or 2 martial immortals below the 3rd heavenly layer. As he spoke, Tian Hun used his primordial spirit's power to draw out a special symbol. It looked like a hieroglyph and resembled a human. Go and find it according to this symbol. After you find it, don't let them dig it open. Go and open it yourself. Otherwise, I won't care if all your subordinates die. Chu Xiu nodded and said, very well, I'll take my leave first. I feel that the day I let you out should not be far away. After Chu Xiu left, Tian Hun looked at Chu Xiu's back and muttered, that's right, it's not far. However, it should be a bit slower. After returning to the lower realms, Chu Xiu called Wei Shuya and the others over and arranged for them to enter the 3 nations' dragon veins to train. Although the dragon veins were capable of self-healing, the power they emitted before they healed could be easily absorbed by others. The people under Chu Xiu could enter the three nations' dragon veins and increase their strength explosively. This was especially so for Shang Tianliang, Lu Jianghe, and Lu Fengxian. The three of them had already reached the half-step martial immortal realm. Their comprehension was also sufficient. With the help of the dragon vein's power, they could definitely step into the true martial immortal realm. After making arrangements for them, Chu Xiu looked for LV Longguang and asked him to mobilize all of Eastern Qi's power to search for clues about the original God Palace. Meanwhile, he prepared to cultivate in seclusion in Eastern Qi's dragon veins. LV Longguang asked carefully, "May I ask, Cult Master Chu, what kind of place is this?" Chu Xiu said with a faint smile, "It's a good place for me, but it's not necessarily the same for you. Of course, you can also try to enter it. However, don't blame me for not warning you if you die." After hearing Chu Xiu's words, LV Longguang immediately stopped talking. He did not dare to be blinded by greed and get involved in the things that these influential figures played with. During the time that Chu Xiu cultivated in seclusion, the entire lower realm seemed peaceful. However, in reality, all the factions had made their moves. Tianhun was right. The factions had not only come to the lower realm to fight for providence and recruit disciples. They were also plotting to dig out the things that their ancestors had left behind. 10,000 years had passed. Although they did not know if those things could still be found in the lower realm, as long as they could find one, it would not be a wasted trip. Eastern Qi's Donghai County. This place belonged to the border of Eastern Qi and was close to the East Sea. Although it also belonged to Eastern Qi, it was far away from the Central Plains. After the heavenly demonic palace came to the lower realm, they settled down here. The sects in the southern territory had already been destroyed by Chu Xiu. It could be said that they were the most low-key group after the lower realm. Although the heavenly demonic palace did not make an enemy of Chu Xiu, the only expert in the 8th heaven of the heavenly demonic palace, Zhuo Qiuliang, was trapped in the heavenly demonic palace in the southern territory due to an accident. He could not move. As an expert in the 8th heaven, the role that he could play was very limited. He could only barely prevent the heavenly demonic palace from being destroyed. Therefore, the heavenly demonic palace only had Yuan Kongqing, who had just stepped into the 5th heaven of the heavenly demonic palace. Their deterrence was limited. However, the most tragic thing was their situation after the lower realm. When the heavenly demonic palace wanted to recruit a group of disciples excitedly, they discovered to their dismay that the entire demonic path in the lower realm had been unified by Chu Xiu. There were no demonic path warriors who would suddenly join the heavenly demonic palace. Of course, there were those demonic path rogue cultivators who were not very powerful. However, even the heavenly demonic palace looked down on them. As for whether they should compete with Chu Xiu for the orthodoxy of the demonic path, the heavenly demonic palace did not even think about it. The heavenly demonic palace had joined forces with Chu Xiu several times, but it was because of this that they knew how terrifying Chu Xiu was. It was not that they did not want to fall out with Chu Xiu and compete for the orthodoxy of the demonic path, but they did not dare to. Therefore, ever since they came to the lower realm, the heavenly demonic palace had been taking root in the East Sea County in a low-key manner. To outsiders, their presence was a little low, but in fact, the heavenly demonic palace was very busy. At this time, at the edge of the coast of the East Sea County, the formation masters of the heavenly demonic palace had set up layer after layer of formations here, blocking all the seawater at the edge. In addition, there were hundreds of disciples constantly digging, even using formation discs to sense the aura below, changing positions from time to time. At this time, Yuan Kongqing was personally directing the people of the heavenly demonic palace to dig. A heavenly demonic palace warrior next to him said hesitantly, "Deputy Palace Master, that legendary person is not our heavenly demonic palace's ancestral master. Are we really going to dig him out? Besides, it has been so many years, his Yuan Shen has probably dissipated long ago, right?" Yuan Kongqing waved his hand, his eyes flashing with fanaticism. "What do you know? That person is the strongest in the history of the demonic path, and he is known as the Supreme Heavenly Demon. Although the ancestor of the Heavenly Demonic Palace is not him, we have received guidance from him. At present, the Palace Master is trapped in the Heavenly Demonic Palace, and with his cultivation base of the 8th layer, he can only sit in the depths of the palace. With the guidance of Lord Supreme Heavenly Demon, the Palace Master can completely escape, and even have a chance to reach the 9th layer. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.